Every crime leaves a trail. Some are written in blood, some in silence. Tonight, we're diving into real cases that stunned investigators and revealed how thin the line is between normal life and darkness. These stories are real. The details are disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's begin.
This recording conceals an upsetting mystery. The couple cheering in the stands is Celeste and Stephen Beard. They're going to the secondary school graduation of their twin little girls, Jennifer and Kristina. Presently, check the lady out sitting alone before them. She is Tracy Tarleton. From an external perspective, she looks supportive of the twins, applauding as they stroll across the stage. In any case, what the young ladies don't have the foggiest idea is that only a couple of months before this recording was taken, Tracy was set free from a mental office also, has been meeting with their mom's secret, plotting a violent wrongdoing that will drive the two teenagers to run for their lives.
She's very scary. There wasn't enough locks on the door for the two of us to feel safe.
We were scared to death. We thought she'd kill the girls.
You better get your home tonight. You understand that? Because if you don't, you will be sorry.
It's 1993. 13-year-old Kristina lives with her mom Celeste and her stepdad Stephen in Austin, Texas, while Jennifer, Kristina's identical twin sister, lives with their biological father Craig in Washington State. The twins' parents went through a lengthy custody battle after their divorce, which ended in the twins being separated between both parents. Living hundreds of miles away from each other was difficult for the girls because they were each other's best friends.
I missed her a lot. I missed Jen a whole lot. We were built-in friends with each other.
I would not know how to be a regular sibling. You know, it's always been nice to have someone that knows exactly what I'm going through. It was definitely hard not to have my other half.
It's July 1996. After 3 years of living apart, the twins have finally planned a summer trip together, reuniting at their grandparents' house in California. They're really excited because it's the first time they have seen each other in over 2 years.
My sister and I never skipped a beat.
Laughing so hard that we were crying, and I just couldn't believe that we were actually back together again.
However, things take a turn for the worse when Jennifer tries to call their father Craig to let him know they've arrived safely, but no one is picking up the phone. They keep trying to call, but still no answer. After 2 days of not talking, the twins receive the news that their father has been found dead in his home, leaving behind a handwritten letter. He had been quietly struggling for years, leaving his daughters asking themselves why he would do this.
I felt like I died that day.
The twins are in a state of shock. What was supposed to be only a 2-week reunion turned into Jennifer suddenly moving in with Kristina, Celeste, and their new stepdad, Stephen Beard, in Austin, Texas. At first, she had a hard time adjusting to the change, but when she met Steve Beard, her new stepdad, he was surprisingly very welcoming and loving, showing a lot of attention to his new stepdaughter. After years of living together, the new blended family from the outside appears to be living a happy life.
When I first met Steve, he was just so sweet, which was a relief, you know, because he was technically my stepdad. On Sundays, it was really special because Steve and I would always go to breakfast together. I was very grateful to have his relationship.
The sisters have just started their senior year of high school, and they, for once, have a stable father figure. Stephen even formally adopted the twins, giving them each a special family ring.
He had always wore his.
He just gave it to us after he adopted us, and we thought it was the coolest thing.
I mean, I was definitely moved that he had this special ring made, and I mean, just the adoption alone, you know, I felt pretty connected to him.
But everything changes on October 2nd, 1999 at 2:30 a.m. Jennifer is staying with her boyfriend while back at Stephen's house. Kristina is asleep like any other night, when all of a sudden, Kristina's bedroom door swings open.
The lights turn on, and my mom is running through the door saying, "Someone's at the door." And I'm like, what is going on here? I jump out of bed because she's in a panic, and I'm on my way to that front door when I see these white flashing lights.
Kristina is in a state of shock, not knowing who is outside or what they want. So she runs to the phone and calls 911 in a panic. The girl tells them that there is someone banging on their front door and sirens are blaring outside, with lights flashing all around their home. The 911 operator tells Kristina that the people outside are the police. Moments earlier, the dispatchers received this 911 call from someone else inside the house.
What is going on there?
I'm in bed.
How did
I'm in awful pain.
Okay, are you there by yourself?
My wife is somewhere in the house. I can't find her.
Kristina rushes to the front door to let the police inside.
I open the front door, and it's cops. And they're like, "Is your dad home?" And I said, "Yeah, he's upstairs."
Kristina hurries to her stepfather's bedroom with the police as her mother frantically runs behind them.
The paramedics, they were already working on Steve by the time I, myself, and the police officer got into the room.
This was a man who needed immediate medical attention, and they needed to act quickly if he was going to survive.
The paramedics try to stabilize Steve, but he's losing a lot of blood. While they scrambled to transport him to the hospital as quickly as possible, one of the police officers makes a shocking discovery: a shotgun shell on the ground next to his bed.
I'm like, "What? Are you telling me he was shot?" And they said, "Yes." And I just couldn't believe it.
Kristina calls her sister and tells her what is happening as Steve is airlifted to the nearest hospital.
Just couldn't believe what he just said. I'm panicked. I'm definitely panicked.
Back at the Beard household, the crime scene is blocked off as investigators conduct their initial walkthrough. It seems like someone went through a side door, which was left unlocked, and went up to Steve's bedroom to fatally shoot him. But before they can start investigating their theory, they need to take DNA, swabs of everything, including all family members who could have been in the house at the time of the crime: Kristina, Jennifer, and their mom, Celeste.
So at that point, I'm shocked that, first off, Steve had been shot, but I wouldn't have even thought who could have done it. I was wondering if it was burglar or random, but as soon as we walked out of the house, Celeste whispers to me, "If the police ask you who might have done this, don't mention Tracy's name."
Why would Celeste say don't mention Tracy's name?
Tracy Tarleton. 6 months before the night of the attack, Celeste met 45-year-old Tracy. She was the manager of a local bookstore in Austin and had recently become close friends with Celeste. She would often get invited by the twins' mom for dinner and birthday parties, and even attended their high school graduation.
They had this weird friendship.
I just remember thinking that this lady wants more from our mom than just a platonic relationship.
The twins are on their way to the hospital as they try to understand what's happening. They are confused because they were told by their mother not to mention Tracy, but that only raises suspicions in their mind.
I was thinking maybe she's protecting Tracy because she thought it was Tracy.
After getting to the hospital and talking to the detectives, they asked me, who do I believe shot my father? And I said, my mom doesn't want me to mention this, but I'm not supposed to say Tracy Tarleton.
Tracy Tarleton is investigated, and her closeness to the Beard family makes her the prime suspect. But something is off. Without any clear motive, detectives have suspicions that someone else is involved.
There was no reason for Tracy to do this completely on her own.
Police quickly obtained a search warrant for Tracy Tarleton's house based on compelling evidence: a 20-gauge shotgun shell, the very bullet that had wounded Stephen Beard. They then proceeded to Tracy Tarleton's home and knock on her front door.
Miss Tarleton was asked if she owned a shotgun. She said yes. I asked if I could see it. She thought for a few minutes and she said, okay, you can see it. She gave us a Franchi 20-gauge shotgun. Had her name inscribed on the weapon itself.
Law enforcement take possession of the shotgun, bringing it in for further analysis. Days go by, and everyone is left waiting for news from the investigators until finally, the detectives have the results.
And that shotgun turns out to be the shotgun from which the bullet that injured Mr. Beard was fired from.
October 8th, 1999. 5 days after the shooting of Stephen Beard, Tracy Tarleton is arrested and charged with attempted murder, But investigators are not satisfied. Tracy is refusing to talk about why she did this, and they know there's more to this story than they have so far. Detectives continue to ask questions because they believe Tracy did not act alone, and there might be someone else responsible who currently walks free, but she remains completely silent. Meanwhile, Stephen is in the hospital, and after a painful few months of fighting with the twins by his side, Steve passes away from his injuries related to the shooting.
We loved Steve. He never wanted us to worry about anything. He just wanted us to be loved and enjoy our lives.
Coming from Washington State, losing my father, he filled that role for me that I'll never forget.
As the sisters try to cope with their father's death, they're only left with pain and more questions than ever. Why would someone want to hurt him? Their mother, Celeste, tries to be there for them and goes with the girls to prepare for the funeral and buy a casket for him, but the twins never expected what would happen next.
A lot of crying's going on. We just lost a loved one.
And while we were there, she purchased 2 pink caskets for Jen and I. And she's like, I'm gonna get these for you guys.
The confusing part to me was Celeste suggesting that 18-year-olds needed to pick out a casket. And in the back of my mind, I thought, well, am I going in this casket soon?
Local newspapers and television networks start publishing the story, and everyone starts to worry that the real killer might still be walking free. But without any concrete evidence, the investigators are at a standstill. In the midst of it all, the twins notice their mom's behavior is becoming increasingly disturbing and erratic.
We're all crying, and Celeste is just laughing.
She kind of had like these crazy eyes.
Kind of manic, very loud and emotional, but didn't really seem real.
But things reach a breaking point on February 16th, 2000, when no one could imagine what was in store for 2 young twins.
She then said, hey, why don't we all kill ourselves?
And all of a sudden, she pulls out a knife.
She's holding it like this, and she goes to like kind of lunge.
She just stabs herself in the leg.
Blood starts gushing everywhere.
I was just like, what is happening?
The twins call 911 in a panic, begging for immediate medical attention for their mom. As the ambulance arrives, the paramedics rush to start working on Celeste, attempting to stop the bleeding from her leg. The girls are in a state of shock as their mom is quickly brought into an ambulance and driven to the closest hospital. Over the next weeks, while still in the hospital, Celeste continuously calls both sisters, becoming more and more unhinged
yelling
and disturbing.
And screaming at me over the phone.
Would go from normal to screaming, back to normal.
That's when Kristina has an idea that will later give investigators the evidence they need to finally uncover Steve Beard's real murderer.
That I thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start recording her conversations because I want to play them back to her, and she'll then hear, like, from my perspective, what I'm hearing and think, oh, that's awful. I can't believe I'd do that.
And you will be sorry.
But then, just as Kristina is about to stop recording, Celeste exposes a crucial piece of evidence that will change the investigation forever.
She says, I hired somebody to kill Tracy. I froze. It made it all real, and it made it all unsafe.
The twins are terrified, realizing that the pink coffins she bought, the recurring bizarre and violent outbursts, the suspicious death of their father, and now her murder plot for Tracy are all leading to one thing. They will be next on her list.
Hearing that sealed it for me. Like, any sort of doubt that I ever had that Celeste was involved with our father's murder, I don't have anymore.
And things get worse from here on. Their mom has been released from the hospital, and now the twins are in more danger than ever. At that moment, Jennifer and Kristina's last chance to survive is to go into hiding and make sure their mom can't find them.
I cleared out my bank account for Kristina and I to go on the run and not have any trace. We stayed in motels. Everything we did with cash. Celeste was trying to find us every day, trying to find us. All I kept replaying in my head was we are in danger. It was definitely terrifying. Like, we're not coming home from this.
As Celeste is on the hunt for her daughters, the twins, armed with the taped conversations of their mother's threats, go to the police to obtain a family violence protective order, which is granted. However, their suspicions of their mother's involvement in their stepdad's death can only be confirmed by one person, Tracy Tarleton.
This whole entire time, Tracy was keeping her silence, that she acted in this alone.
Tracy, who was in prison awaiting a trial for her role in Steve's murder, kept silent until March 2002, when she reads that the twins received a family violence protective order against their mother in the newspaper. In that moment, she breaks her silence and decides to cooperate with investigators, revealing to detectives the truth behind her motive. What investigators have been waiting to hear since the night of the murder, that she did not kill Steve on her own, but in fact, it was Celeste's plan all along. Now, with Tracy's crucial statement and the twins' incriminating audio recordings, investigators finally have enough evidence to arrest Celeste for capital murder on March 28, 2002. However, just because Celeste is arrested doesn't mean a jury will find her guilty.
I felt like if she doesn't go to jail, I was going to be living underground forever. And I wasn't going to feel safe until she was in jail. With her on the street, nobody's safe.
The twins begin to work with prosecutors, lawyers, and Tracy Tarleton, the woman who pulled the trigger, to take down their mother and ensure she never gets out of prison. February 3rd, 2003, the trial begins of Celeste Beard. In front of their own mother, the sisters need to take the stand.
I felt like I don't want to be in the same room with her. I was afraid, oh my gosh, how do I stay strong enough to not waver?
Worst thing I've ever had to do in my life is see Celeste staring back at me when I had to sit on the stand and testify to everything that I knew she did. I was conflicted because she's my mom, but I just wanted to make sure that Seath got justice.
The twins describe that throughout all their lives, their mom has had severe mental health problems, causing violent outbursts and an overall traumatizing childhood.
Growing up, her emotions were all over the place. There was a lot of yelling and screaming and nasty phone calls. It seemed normal to us.
Jennifer reveals that when Celeste married 69-year-old retired TV executive and multimillionaire Steve Beard, it wasn't out of love, but it was to gain access to his large inheritance.
Did Dena never talk to you about her feelings about Steve Beard?
Well, she said that she married Steve for his money.
Did she tell you about what would happen if Steve Beard died?
That she would get it all. She would say, why wouldn't he die already?
Did it appear that she was looking forward to that, or?
Yes.
Investigators uncover that after only 6 months of marriage, Celeste had spent over $500,000 of her husband's money, secretly buying all kinds of clothes, jewelry, and artwork. The twins even noticed that Celeste had put sleeping pills in Steve's food on multiple occasions, and once he fell asleep, she would sneak out of the house. In February 1999, 8 months before Stephen Beard's murder, Celeste also had a psychotic breakdown, taking a gun, pointing it at her own head and threatening Kristina's life. Because of that incident, she had to be forcibly checked into the St. David's Psychiatric Mental Hospital in Austin, Texas. And while staying at that psychiatric facility, that's when Celeste met Tracy Tarleton. Their mother quickly started to show her a lot of attention, spending time with her, and ultimately developing a close, intimate relationship. After building all that trust, Celeste's real plan can be put into action. She could now manipulate Tracy.
She expressed to me that she wanted this sexual relationship with me, which I also wanted.
Celeste had been setting up Tracy, saying, Steve is abusive to me. He's so horrible. And Tracy believed that Celeste was really in trouble.
Celeste Beard, I don't think ever loved, maybe didn't even like Tracy Tarleton, but she was willing to engage in a lesbian relationship in order to get what she wanted. I just saw this
this woman that I love in a desperate situation, trying to find a way to survive this man that was so awful.
Celeste said to Tracy, I cannot live any longer with this abusive husband, but Steve wasn't abusive.
That's when, in front of the twins and the jury, Tracy described Celeste's plan for the murder of her husband.
You know, she says, oh man, he's gonna die soon, but not soon enough. She had a plan, and she wanted me to shoot him with my shotgun. She told me where to enter the grounds, where to park, and then we walked through how I would exit my car, where I would enter the house, how I would approach the bedroom. I walked down to the end of the bed, I saw him, and I pulled up and I shot him.
Shot him once?
I shot him once.
The courtroom stays quiet after the shocking revelation. Celeste coldly watches Tracy on the stand, shaking her head and even laughing occasionally. But her smile disappears when her own daughters walk up to the front of the courtroom and now have their turn of revealing one of the most incriminating pieces of evidence they have, the audio recording of her murder plot against Tracy, as well as her constant threats to the girls.
On the tapes, she was histrionic. It was difficult to think that any mother would talk to a child that way.
The trial went on for weeks, until on March 19, 2003, after deliberating for 3 days, the jurors finally come back with their answer. This will finally determine if Celeste will remain in prison for the murder of her husband, or if she will walk free to forever haunt the twins for their whole lives.
Before we bring the jury out, if there's for life.
Finally, the sisters get justice for their father's murder. And to conclude the trial, Kristina bravely takes the stand once more, but this time to directly speak to her mother and put an end to the fear she has been living with for over 2 years.
What did I ever do to you except love you? And this is how you treated us, like trash. You say we turned on you, but you turned on us. You turned on the whole Beard family. He let you into his home, loved you, honored, obeyed you, and you violated him and murdered him. You are guilty. Shame on you.
Celeste Beard is sentenced to 2 consecutive 40-year prison terms, and she won't have the possibility of parole until she's 79 years old. The twins can finally breathe a sigh of relief, as now they don't need to stay in hiding. They can live their lives to the fullest. After court is adjourned, Tracy asks to meet with the twins and apologizes to them directly for the pain she has caused the sisters.
I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, is sit in a room with the person that actually pulled the trigger. She said that she felt really guilty for killing our father and that she was really sorry. I remember that.
She thought she was agreeing to kill an evil man. I feel really bad for her. I could really relate with the fact that she was a victim here too.
Twins say that for them, this sincere moment of forgiveness helped them begin their long process of healing. Now, 20 years after the trial, their sisterly bond only became stronger.
I have Kristina. Kristina's my strength. We don't live close to each other, but any chance we can get to go visit each other, we will.
The twins are now 42 years old. Jennifer has a good job, which she enjoys, and spends her time focusing on her mental health. Kristina got married and is a loving mother of 2 children. She is proud to give her kids the life, attention, love, and nurturing she never received growing up.
Being the mom that I wanted.
They get to do life like I wish I got to.
Celeste never expected that her downfall would come from her own daughters. And even though it took years for Jennifer and Kristina to heal from the wounds created by their mom, they show that their love for each other is stronger than their mother's hatred. Carrying on with their best lives, getting to know each other with their caring families, is their best revenge. Their undeniable evidence that even after misfortune, there's a life worth living. What do you think of this case?
You never really know what someone is dealing with behind closed doors, and this is especially true of those lives we follow on social media in the eyes of their 1 million plus social media fans. Anna and Ali Abulaban were the perfect couple, beautiful people leading a beautiful, glamorous life. It was an image that would be shattered in the most gruesome of ways on October 21st, 2021. This is the story of Anna and Ali Abulaban. It is a story of a toxic and obsessive love, hidden from the world behind a carefully curated public image, and the jealous rage that would end it in the most savage way imaginable.
I've never met anyone else like you. And I don't think I ever will. I'm not saying that because it's cliche. I'm saying that because no one's ever moved me the way that you do.
San Diego is frequently coined America's finest city. Located on the coast of Southern California, San Diego has an idyllic climate, 70 miles of white sand beaches, a vibrant nightlife, and an endless number of family attractions. One of the liveliest parts of town is the urban enclave, known as the East Village, a trendy downtown neighborhood with over 700 businesses, a host of luxury high-rise apartment blocks, and dozens of clubs, rooftop bars, and live music venues. It was at one of these luxury high-rise apartments in the East Village of San Diego that in 2021, 28-year-old Anna Marie Abulaban was living with her husband Ali and their 5-year-old daughter Amara. From the outside looking in, the Abulaban family seemed to have it all. A fairy tale romance, stunning good looks, a beautiful daughter, a wide circle of friends, and growing fame as social media influencers. 29-year-old Ali, better known by his TikTok handle, Jin Kid, had already garnered 1 million plus followers across various social media platforms for his comedy skits.
Alright, so what do you call yourself, tough guy, huh? Antonio Montana. And you? What do you call yourself? Listen, buddy, I'm the only one that asks questions around here, pal. Got it? You ever been in jail? What, me? No, man, you had the wrong guy.
Life on paper should have been perfect for the Abulabans, or at least as perfect as the choreographed images on their Instagram accounts. Life in San Diego was certainly very different from the life Anna Abulaban had led growing up. Born in 1993 in Okinawa, Japan, to Filipino parents, Anna had gone to high school at a U.S. military base in Japan, where her father had been employed. After graduating high school, Anna had earned a degree at the Technological University of the Philippines. Friends described Anna as charming, intelligent, and down-to-earth. She was also stunningly beautiful, but it was her inner beauty that made her stand out. Her best friend of 15 years, Casey Conroy, said, according to Casey, she was a genuinely good person, a kind, loving friend who felt more like a family member. The future could surely hold only promising things for the bright and vivacious young Anna. It certainly looked that way when she fell in love with Ali Abulaban, a handsome young American soldier stationed at the same U.S. military base where her father worked. 22-year-old Ali Nasser Abulaban had been born in 1992 in Staten Island to Palestinian parents. Before growing up in Virginia, Ali had been an aspiring entertainer from a young age, an extrovert who enjoyed being the center of attention. At 14, he had been the singer in a band before joining the military. It was love at first sight for both Ali and Anna, and the pair embarked on a passionate whirlwind affair. Ali in particular was smitten with Anna, but for Anna's friend Casey, there was something off. Ali was obsessed with Anna, she said. They had only been dating for a few weeks when Casey called her friend, only for Ali to answer. He asked her why she was calling and what she wanted. It was clear to Casey that he didn't want Anna's friends calling. He wanted Anna just for himself. Within a year of meeting her, Ali had married Anna, taken her back to his home state of Virginia, and they were expecting their first child. Once settled in Virginia, the newlyweds welcomed their beautiful baby girl, Amara Abulaban. Life in Virginia was idyllic, according to Ali, who later said they were living the American dream. Ali still yearned to be a star. He sang and wrote music before taking up a new hobby, creating comedy skits and celebrity impersonations for TikTok and later YouTube and Instagram. Ali described himself on his YouTube account as a guy who loves watching movies and creating parodies of my favorite characters. These characters included rapper Tekashi 69 and a favorite, the fictional movie icon Tony Montana from the 1983 movie Scarface. Fans described his impersonations of Tony Montana as uncanny and spot on. His skits about Skyrim, a video game, were also hugely popular with fans and other social media influencers. Ali appeared to be on the brink of hitting the big time in 2019. His first video went viral, and he quickly amassed a significant following with 263,000 followers on Instagram, 950,000 fans on TikTok, and 171,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. Meanwhile, Anna would appear in many of the skits, and she began producing her own content for Instagram, quickly gaining 11,000 followers. It's not clear whose idea it was to shift the family to San Diego. Ali claimed it was Anna's, who had friends from the military base there. For the ambitious Ali, though, who fostered dreams of becoming an actor, a move to California must have seemed like the obvious next step. Neither could have predicted just how rapidly and catastrophically things would disintegrate in the days and months to follow. The Abulaban family moved into their high-rise apartment on Island Avenue in the East Village, San Diego, in February of 2021. Surrounded by old friends and the opportunities presented by this vibrant city, the scene was set for both Anna and Ali to spread their wings, socially and professionally. And Anna was ready to do just that. Her social media posts from that time show her working out, enjoying spa days with girlfriends, and nights out on the town. She looked jaw-droppingly beautiful and impossibly glamorous. Meanwhile, Ali's social media following continued to grow. Interspersed with his own comedy skits were romantic moments of shared laughter with Anna, along with effusive proclamations of love. But this was the couple working overtime to create the illusion of the perfect romantic union. In abusive relationships, both parties often go great lengths to hide the dysfunctional side of their relationship from the public eye, whether out of denial or shame. And then there's the extreme highs and lows that often mark toxic love, with the lows often deliberately kept out of sight. Because while Ali Abulaban took pride in having such a beautiful wife, this pride took the form of possessiveness and an extreme need for control, and Ali was losing control of his beautiful possession. Soon after they arrived, the first serious signs of trouble were beginning to show. Anna's friends in San Diego didn't like Ali, and they clued in on his controlling behavior. Anna's friends were the spiritual hippie types. It unnerved them that he carried a gun everywhere he went. He was also highly aggressive, and his friend Casey said he talked over people, interrupted people, dominated the conversation, and would boast about his success on social media. He was also all about the high life. His cousin, Louis Marinari, said that watching his wife's social life flourish was stirring up extreme jealousy and paranoia, and Ali felt that she was partying too much. He said Ali wanted to control Anna. He wanted to know what she was doing every time of the day. He became extremely jealous, and furious his wife was going out with friends, and he wasn't involved, and it drove him mad. While Ali was a funny guy and loved by his family, Ali had a dark side, his cousin said. He had observed his relationship with Anna close up, and at times found Ali's treatment of her to be abusive. And as the months wore on, that dark side rose to the forefront. Even his skits seemed to escalate in their aggression and take on a foreboding edge. It's not clear when Ali first started using cocaine. It was quickly apparent to everyone, however, when he became a regular user of the drug. Once, while on Instagram Live, a drunk Ali pulled out a bag of cocaine and started snorting it. People thought it was part of a skit until they realized it wasn't. In an apology video the next day, Ali explained that it was his first time using it, and he warned people of the dangers of drugs. But it was a weak and implausible explanation. He then ranted about how much he loved his wife, but that he didn't like her friends, who he said would bring men into their homes to cheat on their husbands. His family didn't support him, he said, and were not in touch with him. Ali's mental state was clearly unraveling right before the eyes of his fans, whose comments now were increasingly turning towards his weight loss and state of mind, and suggestions for him to relax and be strong. One fan wrote, "I knew there was something wrong with him. He was drinking so much and looked so thin." But with his marriage disintegrating, Ali's drug use accelerated. His cousin explained that once while they were out in a bar, he pulled out a huge bag of cocaine and put it on the table. His cousin said that they would be thrown out, to which Ali said that no one could touch him. He could do whatever he wanted. He was Jin Kid. With his over 1 million followers, Ali was starting to feel like a star, superior, untouchable. Things he had always secretly known about himself. Only why couldn't he get his wife, Anna, to see the same? Ali's cousin found his obsession with his wife strange. Ali seemed to sense that he was losing her, or control of her at least. When Anna's friends called, he'd often take the phone and challenge them on why they were calling her. When they were in bars, he would scroll through his phone, looking at photos of Anna and talking about how much he loved her, how beautiful she was, how he would never let anyone else have her. It was clear that Ali was reaching a breaking point. Things were about to implode suddenly and violently. In early October, Anna called the police and reported that Ali had pushed her in front of their daughter, giving her minor injuries. She said that Ali had also shown their daughter a loaded gun and showed her how to hold it. In a video posted around the same time, an incensed Ali is seen hurling abuse at Anna, who is off camera. He accuses her of using him to get into America.
Fucking taking away my whole life? I got a top secret clearance, you trying to fuck that up? Fucking bitch. Fucking talk to me. I'll bring you to San Diego for what? So you can run to your friends? Fucking bitch. You're not even an American citizen. I brought you to this goddamn country. Name one man that would do that shit for you, bitch. Fucking asshole women, man. Ungrateful motherfuckers.
On October 18th, Anna Abulaban finally asked her husband to move out. Then she filed for a divorce and a restraining order. Just like that, something in Anna had finally snapped. But escaping an abuser is rarely as easy as that, and the prospect of losing all control over Anna was not something Ali was able or willing to accept. Ali moved into the Mission Bay Hotel, but without Anna knowing, he made a copy of their apartment's front door key. His drinking and erratic behavior had now reached new heights. In one Instagram live session streamed while driving and drinking from a bottle of red wine, he asked if any sexy females were watching him right now to send him a message. They'd caught him in a moment where he was having problems with his wife, he said. Meanwhile, he was calling Anna incessantly. When he couldn't get through, he'd call her friends or anyone else who would listen. He wanted to know where she was, what she was doing, and why she wouldn't take his calls. Friends begged him to give her some time and space, but he was living in a state of denial, his cousin said. And his obsession with Anna only increased by the day. He seemed to be in shock about her request for a divorce and was losing his mind over it. He felt she was punishing him and that she couldn't actually be serious, and was unable to consider the possibility that she might actually go through with it. His cousin urged him to move on. He assured him that he could find someone else. He could get anyone he wanted. Ali, ever the egomaniac, agreed with him, but he was equally emphatic over the fact that he didn't want anyone else. He only wanted his wife, and he would go to any lengths to get her. No one knew just how dark the depths of Ali's soul really were, and the darkness was about to unleash itself for the world to see. 3 days later, on October 21st, Ali Abulaban sneaked back into the apartment while his wife was out with the key he had duplicated and vandalized it. He then phoned her to tell her what he had done. But there was one thing he hadn't mentioned to Anna. Ali had surreptitiously installed a spying app on their daughter's iPad that would allow him to listen to what was happening inside the house from his telephone. When Anna returned to the house later that day, she brought her friend Rayburn Cadenas Barron with her. Rayburn was 29 and a San Diego native. He was a family-oriented person, a warm and thoughtful person, someone who friends said they could depend on. And when Anna called on him for help that day, possibly to help clean up the apartment or for protection, knowing that Ali had a key and could appear at any moment, he dropped everything to help her. It would be the final catalyst for a deranged Ali. Ali Abulaban was listening to the app on his phone when he heard the sound of his wife and a male voice talking and giggling, and he went into a homicidal rage. He didn't know whose voice he had heard, just that it was male. Just before 3 p.m., he drove from the Mission Bay Hotel to the apartment complex and took the elevator to the 35th floor. The entire way, he cursed and cried and prayed that his wife did not have sex with the man before he got there. Security camera footage showed him running out of the elevator to the apartment, where he opened the door and opened fire. Inside the apartment, his wife and her friend Rayburn were sitting on the couch. He walked over to them, pulled out his gun and shot Rayburn 3 times at close range, striking his neck, cheek, and the back of his head. His wife screamed before he turned the gun on her, shooting her at close range in the forehead. Still armed, Ali left the apartment block and picked up his daughter from school. With his daughter in the car, he told her that he had hurt her mommy. Ali then called his mother and confessed, and then phoned 911 to report the shooting. He said he'd come home to discover his wife and her friend had been shot, and that he wasn't responsible for the crime. After tracking his location via his phone, police arrested him 45 minutes later on State Route 15. I didn't believe it for a good hour. Anna's best friend, Casey Conroy, said, "I heard there was a shooting in the East Village, but I was like, you don't know, you don't know." Me and Anna had been talking about birthday plans in 4 days. I texted Anna immediately. She had just texted me, "What are we going to do for your birthday?" At the preliminary hearing, around 24 family members and friends of the 2 victims packed the San Diego County Superior Court. Several of them sobbed as details of the killings were shared. Ali pled not guilty to 2 counts of murder, as well as special circumstance allegations of multiple killings. Prosecutors may pursue the death penalty if Abulaban is convicted. The judge also issued a protective order that requires Abulaban to stay away from his daughter. Ali was seen sobbing uncontrollably as prosecutors read out the details of his crime. Later, Ali gave a garbled media interview from jail. He said that he had gotten there that day. He'd found his wife and Rayburn kissing. Rayburn's feet were on the table. It was this that made him lose it. The man in his apartment with his wife, his furniture. "I felt like I was in the passenger seat of my own body," he said. "What do you expect a man to do?" Yet he also stated they'd already been shot when he arrived, a claim that makes no sense given his previous statement. His family said that his fame changed him. According to his cousin, he was actually a very insecure person, and social media created a fake reality for him to escape to, but it made him feel as if he was better than other people. It created a monster. Anna's best friend disagrees. Ali is just a bad guy, she says. He's selfish. There's nothing good about him. Ali's favorite fictional character was the violent mobster Tony Montana. Was it because he related to him, to his hunger for power, abuse of others, and violent rages? It seems the more Ali indulged himself in playing the character, the more he came to emulate the violent, paranoid megalomaniac he so admired. And Ali's life ostensibly ended much the same way as Tony Montana's, in carnage, violence, and tragedy. If you were captivated by this story, please remember to give the video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel.
In a tale that unravels like a gripping thriller, Keith Smith concocts a chilling panhandler murder hoax, manipulating not only the minds of a nation, but also the heart of his own daughter. As the layers of deception peel away, revealing a past marred by armed robberies, HIV diagnoses, and a sinister plan for life insurance, the shocking narrative culminates in a courtroom drama where truth battles against a web of lies. Brace yourself for a riveting journey into the dark intricacies of Keith Smith's calculated deception, a story that transcends the boundaries of crime and tragedy.
On November 30th, 2018, the Smith family in Baltimore, Maryland, were having a night out. Valeria Smith was with her father, Keith, and her stepmother, Jacquelyn, belatedly celebrating her 28th birthday at the American Legion Hall. They ate, drank, danced, and took photos. When the family exited the Legion just before midnight, no one would have predicted that the night was about to turn deadly. A few blocks from Valeria's home, Keith slowed the car to a stop and rolled down the passenger window. Jacquelyn wished to offer money to a new mother who was out on the street carrying a small bundle in her arms, as well as a sign that read, "Please help me feed my baby." As Keith would later tragically recount, stopping to help the woman in need would prove to be Jacquelyn Smith's fatal mistake. Both he and his daughter had a message for the city of Baltimore. Be careful who you trust, because things are not always as they seem. 52-year-old Keith Smith placed a frantic 911 call from his vehicle at 12:30 a.m. on December 1, 2018. His wife, Jacquelyn, had been the victim of a stabbing. She was in the passenger seat next to him and needed immediate assistance. His daughter, Valeria, was in the back seat of the car and was also a witness to the unexpected, horrific attack on her stepmother. The operator directed Keith to Johns Hopkins Hospital. Despite valiant medical efforts, Jacquelyn Smith succumbed to her injuries. She had sustained 5 stab wounds to her torso and a single cut to her lower right arm. She was pronounced dead before 1 a.m. that night, the victim of an unsolicited attack by 2 panhandlers who had taken what they could from her and then run off.
Just felt moved to give her something. So at the stop sign, she waved her over to come on over to the car, and then out of nowhere, some guy came over while walking with her. And I hit my window, and Jacquelyn went to hand the money out, and the guy just leaned over and said, "Can I thank your wife?" And I said, "You can thank my wife." And within that split second, this guy commenced to stabbing my wife. Blood was everywhere. It was something that, it was horrific for something like that to happen. But I'm right now just absorbing all of it.
Jacquelyn Smith was born in Providence, Rhode Island, on the 4th of July, 1964. According to her mother, she was a joyful child who grew into a loving and ceaselessly caring adult. At an early age, Jacquelyn developed a love of music and poetry.
That's what we did. We enjoyed music. We listened to music. And so when I'm in my car and I'm listening to music now, I shed a tear.
At the age of 54, Jacquelyn had raised 2 adult sons, one in college and the second a graduate who had joined the U.S. Coast Guard professionally. She had been very successful, holding a role as an electrical engineer and working for the Department of Defense in Maryland. In 2014, she had married Keith Smith. The couple were active in their church. Jacquelyn was known as a woman of faith, and she was also known to have a very generous nature.
Jackie was an awesome, awesome woman, and it's really, really sad, and it's heartbreaking the way that she was taken from us.
The day following Jacquelyn's murder, her husband and stepdaughter courageously stepped out in front of the media to offer a warning to their neighbors. Do not blindly trust in the authenticity of those that appear desperate and in need of your help. They could be dangerous. Some of those on the street are not who they appear to be. This sentiment was also offered by law enforcement, who issued a warning to the residents of Baltimore to be cautious.
I just want to let Baltimore know to be careful when you feel like you want to give, because you don't know what the intentions are of the person that you're giving to.
It makes me look at this whole world differently now. You know, it makes me look at everything and everyone. Nothing is ever what it seems. And you just have to protect your family out here.
Using this ruse as panhandlers to get the attention of their would-be victim. And we also want to caution the public about engaging with panhandlers and recognizing the fact that not all of them have honest intent. Not all of them are in real need.
The nature of the attack on Jacquelyn left many on edge and began to stoke fears of the homeless, not only in Baltimore, but across the country. As news of the horrific murder spread into the national media, attention was drawn further when Oprah heard of Jacquelyn's act of kindness that had led to her death. She tweeted, "I've done this 1,000 times, but will think twice before ever doing it again." Law enforcement released the descriptions of the 2 suspects, ostensibly panhandlers who were targeting charitable individuals to rob them and, if need be, attack them.
To identify that suspect, he's described as a man possibly in his 30s with a goatee. And we also want to identify the woman who was out there asking for money.
Homicide detectives had met with Keith and Valeria on the night of the murder at Johns Hopkins and had taken their initial statements. Then they drove straight out to the 1000 block of Valley Street to secure the crime scene. 3 detectives arrived within a few hours of the incident, yet they were unable to find any indications of the stabbing at the location where it had taken place. The next morning, just past 10 a.m., Detective Borgard, Singer, and Santos tried again, this time in the light of day. They began to conduct a canvass of the neighborhood. After walking the streets, searching the surrounding area, and speaking with local residents, they found nothing of evidentiary value. the team was unable to independently verify where the Smiths had stopped for the panhandlers. They could not locate any witnesses, and the murder weapon, a knife, was not found. What did become apparent to the team of experienced detectives was that the 1000 block of Valley Street was not a well-traveled nor a very well-populated area. This was not an area panhandlers would typically be found. The survey of the neighborhood concluded that most of the houses on the 1000 block were vacant.
Nobody's really panhandling right there. You know what I'm saying? Nobody.
Keith and Jacquelyn's 2012 Audi A7, driven by Keith that night, was brought to police headquarters directly from the hospital for processing. Latent prints were recovered from the exterior of the vehicle on the passenger side, but these were determined to be those of Keith Smith. No other prints were identified. A pair of black gloves were resting on the top of the center console, and a second set of yellow rubber gloves were retrieved from the back seat. An acrylic fingernail had broken off in the seat as well. It appeared to match those worn by Valeria Smith. There was no unidentified DNA or fingerprints in the vehicle that could assist law enforcement in tracking down the unknown panhandler murderers. Investigators were still seeking to corroborate the details provided by Keith and his daughter. Specifically, they sought to verify the route taken by the vehicle. The FBI was called in to assist with extracting data from the Audi's computer to obtain GPS location data. They were unsuccessful despite their thorough and focused efforts. The Baltimore police were struggling to locate any leads. The Homeless Outreach Team, or HOT Team, was also notified. Based on the descriptions provided by Keith and Valeria, this team used all its existing resources but was unable to develop any suspects.
I just want them to find, if anybody knows anybody, if anybody has any information, please help us and find out who did this to my stepmother, please.
The inability to verify the crime scene was an obvious hindrance to the investigation. Seeking to piece together a timeline of the evening, investigators began by acquiring surveillance footage across the city to track the Smiths' movements. They arrived at the American Legion Hall on Madison Avenue. Cameras there confirmed that the Smiths left the hall together at 11:45 p.m. Reviewing the footage of 27 CCTV cameras from the Legion to Valley Street near Valeria's home, the team sought to recreate the path taken by Keith and verified by his daughter. Detectives were unable to locate the Audi on any of the cameras around the areas described. They reviewed motion-activated residential security cameras that could have captured angles of the incident itself. First, at East Chase Street, they found nothing. Then they reviewed the cameras facing East Edgar Street, and again, the cameras failed to capture any footage of the incident or of Keith Smith's vehicle. Their next step was to acquire the cell phone data from Keith and Valeria's phones. Hopefully, they could use signal data to map the family movements that night. Keith's cell phone showed no activity throughout the evening before he placed the call to 911 after his wife was stabbed. But data from Valeria's cell phone proved to be insightful. It showed that the family had not gone south after leaving the American Legion to take Valeria home, as they had told detectives. Instead, they turned north. Connected towers indicated that the family had traveled to Druid Hill Park near the Maryland Zoo and had remained in that location for approximately 15 minutes. Neither of the Smiths had mentioned this stop to the police. In addition to analyzing the father and daughter's phones, police obtained the activity from Jacquelyn's stolen device. Curiously, the last activity shown on her phone was from about 4 p.m. that afternoon from her home in Aberdeen. Although it was reported that Jacquelyn had her cell phone with her on the night of her murder, there's no indication that it ever left her house. What of the other missing items? In the days following the murder, pawn shops across the city were checked for any of the belongings stolen from Jacquelyn during the attack. Her necklace, purse, and cell phone had not turned up in any shops. They could not be located. A week and a half later, however, Jacquelyn's Visa card was flagged. Someone had been using it. Detectives tracked down 3 male teenagers who claimed to have found the card in a Michael Kors clutch left at a bus stop on the corner of Caroline Street and Madison Avenue. The teens were detained and questioned as potential suspects. They were ultimately released, however, when the location of the bus stop was confirmed to be on the exact route taken by Keith and Valeria after leaving the Legion. At least the route defined by cell phone data and tracking Google accounts, not the route they had claimed to police to have traveled. After 3 months of investigating, the Baltimore detectives had failed to uncover a single piece of evidence linking Jacquelyn's murder to a pair of panhandlers. What they had discovered were a series of inconsistencies and contradictions in the statements offered by the Smiths. For instance, Keith told police at the hospital that the second panhandler, the man, had reached into the car and stolen his wife's purse. In subsequent statements, he said it was the woman who did so.
Some guy came over to say, can I thank her? And as he did that, and I'm not thinking he's going to do what he did, he commenced to stabbing my wife. Snatched her necklace before I knew it, and the girl snatched a little pocketbook in the seat.
Keith had initially been very vocal to the media and keen to offer a neighborly warning to fear the city's homeless population. But within a week, the story had picked up national news coverage, and Keith abruptly stopped taking interviews. Police confronted Keith with the location data. At that stage, his story changed once again. He claimed that he had been lost that night and embarrassed to admit it. Yes, they had gone to the park, where the family parked for a time and looked through photos they had taken earlier in the evening on their phones. After he was released from that interview, Keith Smith drove home, remotely agreed to a year-long lease on a modest home in Florida, ordered and packed a rental truck, and left the state.
And he came in one night with a very large moving truck and rapidly loaded it the next day, and we never saw him since.
When Valeria was questioned, she requested an attorney, and the interview ended. Later, she left Maryland as well to meet up with her father. Law enforcement knew that Keith was fleeing, and they were tracking him. Keith must have at least suspected that he was being watched. He attempted to dodge a wiretap on his phone in a few ways, by changing his number, changing his phone provider, and shipping a new cell phone to his daughter. However, law enforcement was still listening in. In February 2019, Keith attempted to book 2 flights out of the country, one to Canada and a second to Cuba. These attempts failed because he did not hold a U.S. passport. Keith eventually deduced that he could fly to the U.S. Virgin Islands by providing only a driver's license. While placing these calls, his search engine was locating information on how one might travel to Mexico without formally going through a border crossing. On March 1st, Keith rented a car in Texas. This move prompted an immediate response by the police in Baltimore, and an arrest warrant was issued for Keith and his daughter 2 days later. The warrant stated that, at the time of writing, 11:15 a.m. on March 3rd, both suspects were 20 minutes from the Mexican border in an obvious attempt to flee prosecution for first-degree murder.
We would all love to take a vacation to Mexico. You get a chance to go to Mexico, you say yes. Your dad says, hey, you know what, let's head on down to Mexico, let's take a little family vacation, some R&R. I don't see there being any criminal element to that.
Mr. Smith is always innocent until proven guilty, and I haven't seen anything yet that proves him guilty.
Keith and Valeria Smith were arrested by Texas law enforcement later on the same day that the warrant was issued.
In the course of our investigation, we developed evidence that Mr. Smith was leaving Maryland, so we made the appropriate national notifications, and the Texas State Police arrested him this morning.
We pursued the evidence from the very beginning, and these detectives were very tenacious. They were very thorough and dedicated.
These individuals took advantage of a situation, a city that is already dealing with its own problems. So we're looking forward to this cruel act being brought to justice.
The arrest warrant did not outline how investigators believed the father and daughter had committed the murder. It outlined the many lies and deceptions fed to detectives throughout the murder investigation, as well as their failure to turn up any other suspects. But that was not all. It seems that the panhandler ruse was not the first plan proposed by Keith Smith to murder his wife. Investigators learned through a friend of Keith's brother Vic that Keith had previously asked for help getting rid of his wife. According to his brother, in the months leading up to her death, Jacquelyn had spoken to Keith about wanting a divorce. According to Vic, this was not the desired outcome for Keith. It seems he preferred instead to make a claim on her life insurance policy, on which he remained the beneficiary. Keith did exactly that, only 2 days after her murder. He arrived at Jacquelyn's work, requesting the paperwork to make the claim. Law enforcement, already deeply suspicious of his story, told the insurer to hold off on the payment. This left Jacquelyn's 2 sons time to fight for her estate in probate court. It also meant that Keith was very short on cash as he schemed a means of escape. He was forced to apply for a cash advance on his American Express, which was declined. The news that the Panhandler murder had all been a hoax was not a surprise to everyone, in particular Jacquelyn's mother, who still lived in Rhode Island. She told the shocked news media that she had always believed that Keith's story was nonsense.
Was phony. I didn't believe her husband at all. I knew something else happened. Why would he stay in the area with her in the car after the man pulled the chain from her neck, as he claims? It was too phony.
The Travain family reported that they were never close with Keith Smith. Because of this, it is unclear if they were aware of his criminal past. 20 years earlier, Keith had committed armed robbery 3 times at the same bank. In December 1999, Keith lost his job with FedEx because of a loss of points on his driver's license. Still, according to the Baltimore Sun, he had just found out that he was HIV positive, struggling to pay for household bills as a single father to his daughter and requiring medication. Keith decided that the First Union Bank on York Road in Towson was a prime target. Its proximity to Interstate 83 allowed for a quick getaway. So, he walked into the bank wearing a ski mask and carrying a pellet gun. He jumped over the counter, emptied the drawers of cash, and exited from the back. This first robbery yielded a payout of about $15,000. 3 months later, he did it again. That time, he took home $6,000. It was 5 months later that he decided to put his plan into effect one more time. By that point, police had a description of his vehicle after it was spotted in East Baltimore. A police chase ensued, ending in a crash and the arrest of Keith Smith. He served 6 years of a 12-year sentence in state prison. Keith told police that he had used the stolen funds to pay bills. When they searched his home, they located roughly $20,000 wrapped into bundles and hidden away in a black bag. Valeria Smith was charged as an accessory to the murder. It is unclear what case, if any, the prosecutors had developed to link her to the premeditated murder of her stepmother. It was clear that she assisted in covering up the murder after the fact. It was revealed that Valeria had been struggling. She was diagnosed as bipolar and spent some time institutionalized for treatment back in 2012. Since that time, she had also developed an addiction to heroin. It was believed that she was, in many ways, another victim of her father's, coerced into assisting him to cover up the murder. For this reason, Valeria was offered a plea deal.
Helped her father. She's indicated in the plea agreement that, she helped her father dispose of the knife, helped her father dispose of, the other property, things of that nature. She's taken full responsibility for that. She's still extremely upset about the entire thing. And she, certainly apologizes to the rest of the family for her role in this.
But you can't tell us whether or not she's going to testify against her own father?
Valeria admitted guilt as an accessory after the fact, and she did agree to testify against her father. The trial took place in late 2021. Valeria told the jury that after celebrating her birthday, her father drove the family to Druid Hill Park with Jacquelyn, who she believed had dozed off in the front seat. There, her father stabbed her stepmother 5 times when she was believed to have been, at least initially, sleeping. He disposed of the knife in the woodland. Valeria was given 2 wallets belonging to Jacquelyn, including the Michael Kors clutch. She testified that she was instructed by Keith to get rid of them. She left one at the bus stop at Caroline and Madison, where she watched as a group of youths wandered over and picked through it. The panhandler story was given to her by Keith. The defense team grilled Valeria over the length of time it took her to come clean. They accused her of playing a more active role in the murder and lying on the stand to save herself. The 32-year-old recovering addict testified that she was forced by her father to lie, but was telling the truth now, because she did not want to go to prison for a murder that she did not commit.
They were soulmates. She was just an awesome woman. She was a powerful woman. I looked up to her, and
Keith Smith was convicted of first-degree murder in December 2021. He was sentenced to life in prison.
A selfish act where he not only manipulated the hearts and the minds of a country, but he manipulated the heart and the mind of his of his daughter, who was addicted to drugs. He was able to utilize this elaborate scheme and story to prey upon her and who she was and her character.
A month after her father, Valeria, was also sentenced, she was given 5 years for her role in covering up the murder. The verdict and sentencing came as a relief to Jacquelyn's family. It was exactly the justice that they had sought.
I was laughing then, and I knew it was a circus. I knew it was all for optics. I knew it was a show, and I was just laughing. And I knew this day would come. I didn't know it would come this soon.
And that was the story of Keith Smith and the Panhandler murder hoax.
The story of a British woman named Dena Thompson, nicknamed the Black Widow, became in the mid-20s one of the main topics for numerous documentaries, TV shows, and crime programs. This pleasant, at first glance woman turned out to be a pathological liar and fraudster, leading at least one man who loved her wholeheartedly to the grave. Dena repeatedly managed to escape punishment, but in 2003 she was still in the dock, despite facing life imprisonment. The court was surprisingly mild, allowing parole. So, in 2022, one of the most dangerous criminals, who miraculously survived her ex-husband, characterized as pure evil, went free. Thompson's victims were always men, which, according to experts, may indicate some kind of trauma received by the criminal in childhood or adolescence. However, Dena's early years were quite prosperous. The girl was born in 1960 in North London and brought up in a full family. Her parents lived modestly, but did everything to ensure that their daughter did not need anything. The head of the family worked as a prison guard, seriously engaged in sports, and from childhood, motivated Dena to attend gyms where she diligently engaged in gymnastics. In addition, the man often participated in all kinds of sports competitions, including those held in other countries, and constantly took his daughter with him. Dena grew up as a quite active, cheerful, and sociable child. She easily made acquaintances and friendships with peers and, with age, learned to quickly win the attention of guys she liked. After school, the girl went to college and then got a job in one of the local banks. At the age of 22 years, Dena met her future first spouse, Lee Wyatt. They first met thanks to the cousin of the guy who organized a couple blind date. Between the young people immediately burst feelings and a stormy romance began. They got along well, spent a lot of time together, and 2 years later officially legalized their relationship. After the wedding, the couple moved to a provincial place called Yapton, with a population of only 3,000 people. Soon the couple had a son, and the new parents began to slowly develop their own business, creating Author's Soft Toys, the images of which they invented together. In parallel, Dena worked as a cashier in a construction organization, and their family, according to neighbors, was quite happy and prosperous. The head of the family was often away on business matters, and was absent from home for long periods of time. With neighbors, the man practically did not communicate, but his wife, on the contrary, quickly made acquaintances with local residents. Dena knew how to win the favor of others easily and gained their trust. In addition, men often paid attention to the attractive young woman and even tried to court her. At the dawn of the 90s, Dena met a young journalist named Julian Webb. The man offered her to work as a model for advertising clothing and household appliances, and soon her pictures were painted on the pages of local newspapers and magazines. Dena was eager to pose and felt at ease in front of the camera. By then, Lee Wyatt hadn't been home for months, and none of the neighbors had any idea where he was or why he'd been gone so long. His wife apparently did not miss him too much, having had an affair with Julian. Just 3 months after meeting the journalist, she introduced the chosen one to his parents, saying that he was going to marry her. Subsequently, Webb's mother recalled that she was quite surprised by such a hasty decision of her son. In addition, a potential daughter-in-law, who was a few years older than Julian, did not inspire her confidence. When the neighbors learned about the upcoming wedding, they were puzzled because they knew that Dena was already legally married to another man. However, her husband hadn't been home for months, and no one knew for sure where he was or what was wrong with him. As it later turned out, all this time, Lee was in the small town of New Key, located almost on the other side of the country. There, he lived under an assumed name and false documents, hiding, as he thought, from the mafia. In fact, the man became a victim of skillful lies of his wife, who convinced him that their family was in mortal danger and escape was the only way out. The couple, as mentioned, were engaged in creating authors' soft toys, and their most successful creation was Leprechaun Sean, which sold well and gained a certain popularity. In early 1991, Dena told her husband that their creation had piqued the interest of the corporation Disney and was ready to pay £50 million sterling for the opportunity to use this character. But the joy was short-lived, and soon the woman reported that representatives of the criminal world, having learned about the big deal, wanted to get most of the money, threatening otherwise to kill the whole family. Dena also came up with a way out of the situation, convincing her husband that he needed to hide. Lee quickly acquired fake documents and went on the run. But before this, the cunning woman persuaded Lee to write several threatening letters to her and make several similar recordings of phone calls, which allegedly were supposed to be proof that he hates his wife so that the mafia would stop pursuing her. The trusting husband, not suspecting anything, did as his wife told him to do, and then fled. In a foreign city with no home or friends, Lee was ready to take on any job, and all the money he earned was sent to his wife and son so that his family did not need anything. Most likely, this escape really saved his life, but the threat came not from fictional bandits but from his own wife. In November of the same 1991, Dena married her new favorite, Julian, and the wedding couple played on the very money that faithfully sent home-deceived Lee. Webb was madly in love and happy, but soon after the wedding, neighbors began to notice that the woman regularly visited her lovers while her husband was at work. After a while, she informed Julian that she was terminally ill and was fired from her job because of it. The story with a fatal diagnosis and dismissal turned out to be a lie from the first to the last word. It also turned out that, from the accounts of the company where Dena worked, a large amount of money was missing, and the main suspect in this crime was herself. Then the woman accused her first husband, Lee Wyatt, who allegedly forced her to go to the crime by threats. As evidence, she provided the very letters and audio recordings that she herself had previously convinced him to make. Wyatt himself returned home as soon as he learned that his spouse had remarried. The case was limited to a scandal, and although Dena claimed that he had beaten her, there was no evidence of this. Nevertheless, the detective sided with the woman, so Lee again had to leave Yapton in a hurry. In love, Julian's situation did not embarrass him at all, and he gave his wife all his savings for the treatment of her fictitious fatal disease. But time passed, the money melted, and the husband began to wonder how the treatment was progressing. It turned out that the woman did not have a single medical document confirming her diagnosis. Relationships in the family broke down, neighbors heard how the spouses fought loudly, and in June 1994, the day after celebrating Julian's 31st birthday, he died suddenly. The evening before the tragedy, his mother called him, but Dena reported that her husband wasn't feeling well and couldn't answer. Julian's mother asked her sister-in-law to call an ambulance, but she ignored her request. The expert examination showed that the young man died of a drug overdose, but for some reason, no one saw a criminal trace in this tragedy, and his wife insisted that her husband voluntarily decided to end his life. In addition, she demanded that Julian's body be cremated, but his parents were strongly opposed to this. Also, after the death of her husband, Dena tried to get a large insurance payment, but she was denied because their marriage was recognized as invalid. At the funeral, Dena did not even try to cry or depict grief. On the contrary, she chose a frank outfit and behaved defiantly. Almost immediately afterward, the widowed woman began to spin numerous novels and affairs. She openly brought lovers to her house, not hiding from the neighbors. Only in 1997 did Dena file for divorce from her first legal husband, and less than a year later, she met Richard Thompson, who immediately managed to charm her. Not thinking long, she told the new lover that she suffered from a serious illness and had to live a very short time. Blinded by love, the man said that he would turn the last months of her life into a fairy tale and was ready to spend all his savings on this. The wedding couple played in one of the best hotels in Florida. There they spent their honeymoon and then returned to their native England, settling on its southern coast in the city of Brighton. According to Richard's memories, his wife literally bewitched him with her care and support. She also skillfully pretended to share all his views and aspirations. He had always dreamed of owning his own boat to professionally engage in fishing, and his wife not only approved this idea but also offered him to open a company that provides a yacht for rent so that he could not only fish himself, but also teach it to others. Less than a year after the wedding, during a New Year's Eve celebration, Dena gave her husband a romantic dinner. They took a bath together, and afterward, she said she had prepared a special gift and asked her husband's permission to tie him up. Richard, not suspecting anything wrong, readily agreed. But as soon as he had the ropes on his hands, a blindfold over his eyes, and a gag in his mouth, he was suddenly struck hard on the head with a bat, followed by another. Luckily, Richard not only did not lose consciousness, but managed to free himself quickly. Then, Dena grabbed a knife and wounded her husband in the shoulder. Richard knocked the weapon out of his wife's hands, immobilized her, and called the police. Dena burst into tears, admitted that all this time she had lied to him and spent all his money. However, already at the station, she pulled herself together and began to claim that it was her husband who attacked her, and she was only defending herself. The story did not end there, and a day later, a real estate agent came to Richard's house to sell the house. He had an appointment with the landlady, who warned him that her husband had left for America on a business trip. At that moment, Richard realized that his wife was planning to kill him, sell the house, and run away with the money. No one would look for Thompson himself for a long time, thinking that he had gone across the ocean. In the course of court proceedings, it turned out that the woman had withdrawn all the money from her husband's bank accounts, forging his signature, and also used his credit cards, accumulating a lot of debts. The case gained wide resonance, and other men began to apply to the police, former lovers of Dena, whom she deceived and cleaned to the thread, telling about a fictitious incurable disease. Then also remembered the first husband of the woman, who had to hide for many years, first from her fictitious pursuers from the mafia, and then from the police. It was finally revealed that it was Dena who stole the company in which she worked, accusing her husband of everything. However, the jury, despite the presence of irrefutable evidence, acquitted the woman in the case of the attack on her husband Richard Thompson, and Richard himself was accused of seeking to attract attention to himself, making up such a story. Nevertheless, Dena was found guilty of numerous financial frauds and sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. The hype around Dena Thompson also reminded about the strange, sudden death of her second husband, journalist Julian Webb. The woman herself told completely different versions and circumstances of his death. She said that her husband was poisoned by steroids, which he took to keep himself in shape, then claimed that he drank a lot and fell asleep in the sun, getting sunstroke, and at the inquest and in general, said that he took his own life, despite her caution. Dena once confessed to her best friend that she had poisoned her husband by putting potent drugs in a spicy dish that he adored. The police managed to track down the owner of the diner where Julian often dined and ordered food to take home. He recalled that the day before the tragedy, Webb's wife took out rice and chicken curry, and then the investigators guessed that it was this seasoning that interrupted the specific flavor of the drugs. In connection with the newly discovered circumstances, a new investigation was initiated, and Julian's body was exhumed and sent for examination. As it turned out, the man was poisoned by a large dose of powerful antidepressants added to his favorite dish with curry, and strengthened their effect with aspirin, which Dena dissolved in her husband's drink. At the time of the call to his mother, Webb was still alive and could be saved, but it was not part of the plans of his wife. In 2003, the Black Widow was finally brought to trial. The investigator at the hearing characterized her as the most dangerous woman he had ever had to deal with, and the judge noted that she was a skilled and very dodgy liar. Dena Thompson was sentenced to life in prison, but with parole eligibility after 16 years. The story of the crimes of the Black Widow, formed the basis of numerous documentary detectives actively discussed in TV shows and mused in the press. Even after Dena was behind bars, detectives unearthed another dark story from her past. As it turned out, one of her first lovers disappeared without a trace and to this day has not been found alive or dead. The young man's name was Stoyan Kostov, and he lived in Bulgaria, where Dena herself trained as a gymnast in the late 70s. Between them began a romantic relationship, and afterwards the guy disappeared forever. The investigation does not exclude that Dena is directly related to this case, and Kostov became one of her first victims, but it was not possible to prove anything. While serving her sentence, Thompson worked with a prison psychologist and underwent rehabilitation courses. Despite her exemplary behavior and the right words about re-education and realization of her mistakes, Dena, according to the detective in charge of her case, does not feel remorse and pangs of conscience and therefore can re-offend. Nevertheless, in the summer of 2022, the 61-year-old Black Widow was released from prison. After learning about it, Richard Thompson said that now he will not feel safe because he does not know what to expect from his former spouse. Now Dena is obliged to report to the police about all her connections and relationships, observe curfew, and report on all financial transactions. She is also forbidden to approach her ex-husbands and lovers affected by her actions. She is forced to wear a special tracking bracelet on her leg that records all her movements. A few months after her release, Thompson was captured by journalists while returning from a store with shopping in a large bag. Curiously, on the ring finger of her right hand was a massive ring strongly resembling an engagement ring. It is possible that another gullible victim fell into the net of the Black Widow.
We all know about groups of people with strong religious beliefs, and sometimes bad things happen because of them. But in 2019, something really shocking occurred. 2 kids went missing and several people lost their lives. Before we begin, we want to send our thoughts and prayers to all the people who became victims of this crazy couple. Now, let's go to San Bernardino, California. Lori Noreen Cox, who later changed her last name to Vallow, was born in 1973 on June 26th to Janice and Barry Cox. She had a big family with brothers named Alex and Adam and 3 sisters, Stacy, Laura, and Summer. Lori's childhood was normal, but let's fast forward to 1992. She married her high school boyfriend, Nelson Yanes, when she was 19. Even though they were deeply in love, things went wrong after a year, and their beautiful love story ended in divorce. But Lori didn't stay single for long. 2 years later, in 1995, she became a wife again, marrying a man named William. Things seemed good, and they even had a son named Colby Ryan. However, a pattern emerged, and in 1998, Lori divorced William. 3 more years passed, and Lori decided to become a wife for the 3rd time. In 2001, she married Joseph Ryan. The couple had a child on September 24, 2002. This time, Lori welcomed a daughter named Tylee into the world. However, it seemed like the 3rd time wasn't a charm because in 2004, Lori asked for a divorce. The two didn't part ways amicably. Lori told her brother Alex that her ex-husband was abusive towards her. In response, Alex threatened Joseph and even attacked him with a taser because of his actions. Her brother ended up with a 90-day prison sentence and 5 years of probation. Despite the tumultuous relationships, Lori was a very attractive woman and caught the attention of many admirers. In 2004, she even took part in the Miss Texas beauty pageant. However, Lori was a free spirit and had a tendency to be impatient. She wouldn't tolerate things not going her way and often had a selfish attitude. More often than not, her partners would end up on the losing side of any argument. By 2005, Lori found herself single again. Even though she had 2 kids, only Tylee was in her care full-time. During that year, she met another man. Lori fell in love again, but this time her new soon-to-be husband would play a crucial role in the unfolding case. Charles Vallow, Lori's new love interest, was a hard-working and handsome man from a big family. Born on August 17, 1956, Charles met Laurie when he was 49, but he appeared youthful and full of energy. The pattern emerged once more, and on February 4, 2006, Laurie heard wedding bells for the fourth time. Charles already had 2 children from a previous marriage, Nicholas and Zachary. Combine them with Laurie's son Colby and daughter Tylee, and the married couple formed a family of 6. This time, things seemed to be going well. The family was happy, Charles had a decent income, and they were all in a good place. In 2014, the couple decided to adopt Charles's grandnephew, Joshua Jackson Vallow, affectionately known as JJ. By then, the 3 boys were living elsewhere, so Laurie and Charles only had Tylee and JJ to take care of. Laurie didn't work, and she was someone who easily got bored. Seeking a new adventure, the family of 4 packed their bags and moved to Hawaii to start a new business. They opened a juice bar called Juice Island in Princeville, on the island of Kauai. Everyone appeared to enjoy their time there, with Laurie and her daughter sharing beautiful shots of the scenery on social media. During their time in Hawaii, Laurie became fascinated by a series of books called Standing in Holy Places. Already a Mormon and deeply religious due to her upbringing, these books intensified her beliefs. Reading them brought about changes in her lifestyle and overall demeanor. Despite the idyllic surroundings, their business venture was not successful. After a couple of years, in late 2016, they had no choice but to move back to Arizona. This marked the beginning of the downfall in the Vallow household. Laurie remained invested in the series of books, this time written by Chad Daybell, a religious author. In 2018, Laurie and her friend Melanie attended an event called Preparing a People. This gathering turned out to be where she met the author of the books that seemingly changed her life and how she saw the world around her. For those questioning why they would attend a preparedness conference, Laurie and her friend discussed preparing a statement to share upon their return. During the event, Laurie and her friend engaged with Chad Daybell, the author of the influential books. They discussed their beliefs, and Chad even expressed a fondness for Laurie, claiming they had been married in 7 previous lifetimes. Despite the event ending, Laurie and Chad continued messaging and staying in touch. A few weeks later, when Charles was away on a business trip, Laurie invited Chad Daybell to her home. However, the gathering wasn't romantic. Melanie and other followers of Chad joined them, and they spent the evening delving into the deeper meanings of God and various religious theories and teachings. Chad couldn't help but focus on Laurie, making her the center of attention in their discussions. Chad Daybell had always been an eccentric figure. Born on August 11, 1968 in Provo, Utah, he grew up in a peculiar way. During his teen years, he met a girl named Tamara, and by the age of 22, they were married. 2 years later, in 1992, he graduated with a degree in journalism. Chad Daybell's life took an interesting turn. After working as a gravedigger at a local cemetery, he ventured into entrepreneurship in 2004 by starting his own book company named Spring Creek Books. About half of the books he published were ones that Laurie had become obsessed with during her previous marriage to Tamara. Chad and Tamara had 5 children, and the family relocated to Rexburg, Idaho, with Chad claiming that God had directed them to do so. Chad viewed the world uniquely, categorizing people as either light or dark. In his perspective, dark individuals were from Earth but followers of Satan, while light people were followers of Jesus. During a gathering, Chad informed Laurie that she was an eternal being with 21 previous lives, 5 of which were on planet Earth. Laurie not only embraced these teachings, but became genuinely excited about them. She developed a profound obsession with her newfound purpose and with Chad himself. Even after the gathering, Laurie and Chad continued to exchange text messages and emails. In 2018, Chad emailed her a chart related to the categories of light and dark, and he went as far as grading her family based on the criteria he provided. Fast forward to 2019, and the Valo marriage was in jeopardy as Lori immersed herself more deeply into the religion that was gradually evolving into a cult. She began to distance herself from everyday life. Lori strongly believed in the concept of light and dark people, often referring to the latter as zombies. She held on to the idea that she was an eternal being destined to lead the 144,000, a group believed to have special protection from God. As her beliefs intensified, conflicts between Lori and Charles escalated. On January 31st, Charles returned from a business trip to find that he couldn't contact his wife and children for the last 2 days. Upon arriving home, he discovered the locks had been changed, his clothes were in the trash, and his bank account had been drained of almost $35,000. Alarmed and with no other recourse, he called the police. When the officers arrived, Charles explained the situation, expressing his concern about not being able to reach his kids for 2 days. He revealed that Lori seemed to have lost touch with reality, believing herself to be a resurrected being and a god, focusing on the prophecy of the 144,000. Charles emphasized that she had taken all the money from their bank account and had even taken his truck from the airport. The situation had become a cause for immediate concern. Charles explained to the police that he had just flown in from Houston to Dallas and a friend was trying to pick him up. He had gone to the community bridges or something to file a report, and they had ordered a pickup. When asked about what made Lori a danger to herself and others, Charles disclosed that Lori had threatened to murder him. Charles clarified that she had threatened him with murder, saying she didn't know who he was and that she could use her powers to kill him. The police tried to understand the situation and asked if this was a recent development or if it had been ongoing. Charles revealed that it had been going on for about 4 or 5 years, escalating recently. Lori would go to the temple every day, claiming to speak with Moroni and Jesus Christ, who would guide her actions. In the last couple of days, Lori told Charles that he wasn't Charles, but someone named Nick Schneider. She claimed to have information from people in Utah who told her about her past lives, probation, and marriages to figures like Moroni and James the Just. Charles acknowledged that this information was foreign to him, and while he used LDS, Latter-day Saints terms, he recognized the craziness of the situation. Charles had previously informed the police about Lori's threats, but they were not taken seriously at that time. Lori would then disappear, remaining off the radar for a total of 58 days. During this period, Charles took action and filed for divorce. During the 58-day period when Lori disappeared, it was later revealed that she had flown to Hawaii with her daughter Tylee. Even after their return, Lori kept her distance from the rest of the family. However, this was just the beginning of her disturbing behavior. On July 11, 2019, the police received a call from a man reporting that he had killed someone. The perpetrator was Alex Cox, Lori's older brother. In the call, Alex claimed that he had gotten into a fight with his brother-in-law, Charles Vallow, and had shot him in self-defense. The dispatcher asked for details, and Alex mentioned that Charles had come at him with a bat. When asked about Lori's whereabouts, Alex said he believed she was taking her son to school. The police instructed him to come out with his hands empty and walk outside. They confirmed the front door was unlocked and officers were on their way. This call marked a tragic turn of events, and it became clear that Lori's family was caught in a web of violence and disturbing incidents. A few minutes after the call, police arrived at Lori's new address, where she had moved just several days prior. At the time of the murder, Lori was taking JJ to school, and Alex and Tylee were inside the house. Charles seemingly arrived at the house and got into an argument with Lori's brother, Alex. During their exchange, Tylee fetched a baseball bat, and Charles took it out of her hand before hitting Alex in the back of the head. In response, Alex grabbed his gun and shot Charles multiple times in the chest. Charles died there in his living room, and his body was discovered by the police several minutes later. While one might expect shock or distress after such a violent incident, Lori displayed an eerie calmness. She acted as if nothing had happened and even laughed and made jokes during her police interrogation. However, the strangeness didn't end there. A few hours after Charles's death, Laurie, in her own house, decided to host a pool party at the crime scene. This behaviour raised eyebrows and added to the bizarre circumstances surrounding the incident. During Alex's police interrogation, officers noticed something suspicious in his statement. He claimed that Charles had hit him over the head with a baseball bat, but upon inspection, the injury appeared minor. Considering Charles was a semi-professional baseball player, he could have caused significant harm if he had wanted to. Alex's story was later questioned in court, but he was released without further investigation. The very next day after Charles's death, Nicholas and Zachary, Charles's sons, were informed of their father's passing. Laurie chose to relay the news via text, deciding not to go through the trouble of making a phone call. Shortly after these events, Laurie, along with JJ and Tylee, moved out of Arizona. Their destination, Rexburg, Idaho, where Chad Daybell lived. The family of 3 settled in the area, but the story took more unsettling turns. In early September, Laurie enrolled JJ in school, but surprisingly, she did not enroll Tylee. On September 8, 2019, Laurie took both kids to Yellowstone National Park, accompanied by her brother Alex. In pictures, they appeared happy, but this outing marked the last time Tylee would be seen. Oddly, Laurie didn't report Tylee's disappearance to the police. Since Tylee had moved to another state a couple of weeks earlier, her absence went unnoticed. Meanwhile, JJ started school and seemed to adjust well. 2 weeks later, on September 17th, a neighbour's doorbell camera recorded footage of JJ playing with a friend in the neighbourhood. Just like Tylee, this would be the last time JJ was seen by anyone. On September 23rd, Laurie called JJ's school and unenrolled him from the program. When the principal questioned her decision, Laurie simply stated that she would homeschool him herself, ending the discussion. The mysterious disappearances of Tylee and JJ raised concerns, but Laurie's actions only added to the growing unease surrounding the family. JJ and Tylee were missing, and as the months passed, friends and family became increasingly concerned about their whereabouts. When asked about the children, Laurie would assure people that they were doing fine and provide false locations, claiming they were at a friend's house or visiting relatives. During this period, 2 significant events occurred. On October 1st, 2019, Laurie rented a storage unit just outside Rexburg. Witnesses observed her storing the children's bikes, belongings, and blankets in the unit. The following day, she was seen at the storage facility again, this time in the company of Chad Daybell. Throughout the month, Chad, Laurie, and her brother Alex visited the storage unit a total of 9 times. The second notable event took place on October 9th. Chad's wife, Tammy, was in her driveway unloading groceries when a masked man with a paintball gun approached her. The man began firing and Tamara screamed for her husband. The assailant fled and Tamara survived the attack. She shared the incident on Facebook. However, just 10 days later, on October 19th, Tamara was found dead in her bed. Chad Daybell called 911, reporting that he had discovered her lifeless. Detectives investigated the scene and initially concluded that Tamara's death was natural. When asked about an autopsy, Chad declined, raising suspicions surrounding the circumstances of Tamara's demise. Chad's refusal for an autopsy on Tamara's death left authorities with no choice but to accept his decision without further probing. Seemingly unaffected by his wife's death, Chad and Laurie flew to Hawaii 2 weeks later, where they got married on the beach in all-white attire. The media and police couldn't ignore the peculiar chain of events and started keeping a close eye on the newlyweds. During and after their honeymoon, when questioned about their family and children, Chad and Laurie began lying. Chad claimed Laurie had never had any kids, while Laurie stated that Tylee had died a few years back without providing any explanation. On November 26th, police decided to conduct a welfare check on JJ. They visited Laurie's house and requested to see him, but Laurie claimed he wasn't at home. She insisted that JJ was back in Arizona with her friend Melanie. The police quickly involved and cooperated with the Arizona Police Department. When confronted, Melanie expressed surprise, stating she hadn't seen JJ in weeks. However, her next statement raised alarms. Melanie revealed that before the authorities arrived, Lori and Chad had called her, asking her to lie and say that JJ was with her. The next day, armed with a search warrant, the police headed to Lori's house, but she and Chad were gone. The couple had returned to Hawaii. Between December 2019 and January 2020, the police officially declared JJ and Tylee missing. They raided Chad's house, seizing his computers, journals, and cell phones. Lori was notified that she needed to bring the children to the police station within 5 days, or she risked arrest. Amidst this investigation, on December 12th, Lori's brother, Alex, suddenly died. The cause was attributed to blood clots, and his death was ruled as resulting from natural causes. Lori, failing to bring the kids to the police station, was finally arrested on February 20th, 2020. Her bail was set at $5 million, and she was extradited to Rexburg, where she remained in custody. Despite Lori being behind bars, the authorities still didn't know the whereabouts of the missing children or what had happened to them. After 4 agonizing months, on June 9th, 2020, Rexburg police arrived at Chad's door at 7 in the morning. Armed with a search warrant for his 1960s home on 4 acres of land, investigators spent a few hours at the property. Soon, they made a grim discovery: human remains buried next to Chad's red barn. Initially unidentified, a day later, it was confirmed that the remains belonged to JJ and Tylee through DNA testing. The long-awaited discovery brought devastating news to the families and friends who had hoped for a different outcome. JJ and Tylee were found, but unfortunately, their fate was not the one their loved ones had wished for. In Rexburg, moments of shared grief and condolences unfolded on Wednesday as neighbours, community members, and the media expressed sympathy to the grandparents of JJ Vallow. The heartbreak of the situation resonated through the community, and people expressed their sorrow for the family's pain. Community member Janice Summers, who closely followed the case, captured a video of Kay and Larry Woodcock, JJ's grandparents, walking near the Daybell property where they believed the remains of their grandson and his sister Tylee were buried. The video captured the devastating impact of the situation on the family and the community. On the day of the discovery, Chad Daybell attempted to flee, but was quickly apprehended by police. After running just 1 mile from his property, he was tackled and arrested. Chad was charged with concealment and alteration of evidence. Both Lori and Chad remained in prison, with their trial set for 2023. The community and the affected families were left grappling with the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. After the disappearance of JJ and Tylee, witnesses reported that Lori began referring to her children as zombies. This disturbing terminology aligns with Lori's previous characterization of dark individuals as zombies. The tragic fate of the children might be connected to these ominous beliefs and practices.
The man in this video is 35-year-old John Poulos. He recently left his wife and 3 children, transferring their entire marital estate to an offshore trust, leaving them in a state of financial difficulty. He embarked on a new life with a 21-year-old DJ from Colombia, whom he met online. While his family back home had to fend for themselves, John traveled the world with his new romantic interest. He even boasted on Twitter about the woman from Colombia, whom he had invited on a vacation before even meeting her. This tweet was posted in December 2022, and just over a month later, surveillance footage captured John attempting to dispose of his girlfriend's lifeless body and subsequently trying to leave the country. This is the astonishing case of John Poulos. John Poulos was born in 1988 in Franklin, Wisconsin. He married his high school sweetheart, Ashley, in 2009, and the couple had 3 beautiful children together. To the outside world, they appeared to be the perfect couple. However, in 2016, their happy family faced a devastating blow. Their eldest son, just 4 years old at the time, was diagnosed with an extremely rare form of cancer affecting only 350 people annually. John and Ashley became tireless advocates for their son, fighting for FDA approval of a promising new treatment and rallying community support to raise $60,000 for medical bills. In 2017, after 13 grueling hours in surgery to remove 150 tumors, the Poulos' brave little boy finally emerged cancer-free. His inspirational journey resonated nationwide, and the family was even invited as honored guests of the Speaker of the House for the President's State of the Union address in 2018. There, the family epitomized strength, hope, and perseverance in the face of such frightening odds. They became a symbol of hope for many couples throughout America, yet few could have imagined the tragic troubles that would soon engulf the Poulos household. What many didn't know was that behind closed doors, the Poulos' marriage was far from ideal. John's abusive and controlling behavior had taken its toll on Ashley. In 2021, after years of living in fear, she finally filed for divorce. Before the divorce was even finalized, John transferred the family's entire marital estate into an offshore trust, leaving Ashley and the children with nothing. He abandoned them all and soon started living a high life, residing in various European countries, including Cyprus, Turkey, and Ukraine, before establishing residence in Texas. John also completely withdrew from his children's lives, not seeing them in person since leaving Wisconsin in January 2021, and he also refused to provide any child support, despite a judge ordering him to do so. The divorce process quickly became complicated, with John exploiting legal loopholes by declaring himself a sovereign citizen throughout the proceedings. This meant that he incurred no legal fees himself, and at the same time caused his wife to incur thousands of dollars in attorney fees. What his wife didn't know at the time was that, while their divorce proceedings were still ongoing, John had already moved on and had met someone new. In April 2022, John met 21-year-old Valentina Tres Palacios on the popular dating app Tinder. She was a popular DJ who was making a name for herself in Colombia's capital. She started DJing in her teens and by 21 had become a big part of Bogotá's nightlife. She specialized in Latin dance music like reggaeton and guaracha, playing at all the top clubs, and was even named the Breakthrough DJ of the Year at the Columbia Dance Awards in 2019. John fell hard and fast for Valentina, so much so that before even meeting her in person, he invited her on an all-expenses-paid luxury vacation to Cancun, Mexico. Here, the two got to know each other better and decided to make their relationship official. What followed was a jet-setting relationship, with John making multiple trips to Colombia over the next several months to visit Valentina in Bogotá. He showered her with lavish weekly gifts of cash, though the exact amounts are unknown. It was clear that John was completely infatuated, and only a few months into dating he proposed marriage. In December 2022, John Poulos provided a surprising response to a viral Twitter prompt asking users to share their most incredible first date stories. Invited a Colombian woman on vacation without meeting her first. Now we're getting married. John tweeted on December 17th, alongside a photo with his fiancée, Valentina Tres Palacios. At the time, the post painted a picture of an enviable modern romance that blossomed across continents online. However, just over a month later, this supposed fairy tale union would come to a horrifying end at John's own hands. John Poulos arrived in Bogotá on January 19th, 2023. The plan was for him to remain in Colombia and start his new life with Valentina. He told her that he had gotten them an apartment in the city center, although it would later be revealed that it was a short-term rental. At 8:53 p.m., security footage shows Poulos wheeling a large blue suitcase into the apartment, the very same suitcase in which Valentina's body would be found just 2 days later. The following day, John Poulos went to Valentina's mother's house to pick her up with all her belongings, so that she could move in with him. Cameras captured them entering the building together shortly after 7 p.m. After loading up Valentina's belongings, they set off to John's apartment. The couple then spent the next 2 hours in the apartment before leaving together at 9:46 p.m. Valentina had a gig nearby, and John accompanied her to the venue. They returned briefly at 1:54 a.m., but were then seen leaving again at 3 a.m. to go back to the venue. The couple eventually got home shortly after 5 a.m., and according to court records, their demeanor appeared normal, and they seemed to get along fine. The following day, January 21st, John and Valentina spent most of the day at home, recovering from their late night out. They only left the apartment to go for lunch, but returned a short while later and spent the rest of the day inside. Then, at 10:43 p.m., cameras captured John leaving the apartment on his own. It's not known where he was going at this time, but footage shows Valentina apparently recording him with her cell phone, and her displeasure was evident even on camera. The next morning, January 22nd, shortly after 10 a.m., security footage captured John Poulos wheeling out the same large blue suitcase he had arrived with 2 days prior. The suitcase was now covered by a gray blanket because it was too small to contain Valentina Trespalacios' body, and her head was visibly sticking out of it. Poulos used the blanket to obscure her head. Just 4 minutes later, cameras spotted Poulos in the parking garage struggling to load the clearly heavy suitcase into the trunk of his rental car. The video shows Poulos straining to lift the bag, confirming it was now far heavier than when he arrived. John Poulos is then seen dumping Valentina's body and attempting to flee when he arrived. John Poulos then sets off, and cameras along the way capture him driving the rental vehicle in the direction of the Los Cambulos neighborhood. Poulos stopped near a dumpster in this area where he abandoned the suitcase containing Valentina's body. He immediately sets off again and drives towards Bogotá's airport. Cameras showed him arriving at the airport before he boards a plane and leaves the country. That evening, a homeless man who was rummaging through the dumpsters in the Los Cambulos neighborhood came across a blue suitcase with the head of a female protruding from it. He immediately called the police, who soon confirmed the body to be that of Valentina Trespalacios. Her body told the story of a brutal attack, with extensive bruising on her neck and severe head trauma. Police immediately knew who their main suspect was, and knowing that he held an American passport, they knew that the chances were high that he would attempt to flee the country. Colombian police rushed to place John Poulos on a no-fly list to prevent his escape, but upon arriving at the airport, they learned he had already fled the country, boarding a flight to Panama City earlier that day. What was even more horrifying was that police learned that John Poulos had purchased onward tickets from Panama to Turkey, and then Montenegro, a country that had no extradition agreement with Colombia. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Colombian authorities swiftly contacted law enforcement counterparts in Panama, hoping to intercept Poulos before he flew to Montenegro and was out of their grasp for good. Luckily for the police, they were able to intercept John Poulos just as he was about to board his flight from Panama, and police arrested him and extradited him back to Colombia. Despite the strong evidence against him, Poulos staunchly maintained his innocence and even went as far as to blame Valentina's murder on the Medellin cartel, a now defunct cartel in Colombia that was once headed by notorious gang boss Pablo Escobar. Needless to say, the police didn't buy his story, and they charged John Poulos with the crime of femicide. It turns out that just as with his ex-wife, John was also abusive and controlling towards Valentina. He would monitor her social media, dictate who she could speak to, and even go as far as to hire a private investigator to follow her around when he wasn't in the country. Prosecutors claimed that on the night of the murder, an argument broke out between the couple, and John started physically abusing Valentina. This was evident from the number of bruises on her body. He eventually strangled her, which ultimately led to her death. He then folded her body into the suitcase and dumped it in an attempt to conceal the crime and flee the country. The crime of femicide carries a sentence of 40 years in Colombia. It's defined as the killing of a woman due to her gender, and it is not a charge that exists in the United States. John Poulos has attempted to exploit this technicality to avoid culpability. He claimed there was no translator present during his arrest, and that as an American, he didn't understand the femicide charge. Prosecutors refuted this, stating they fully explained the charges and that Poulos comprehended them. They indicated that if convicted, they would ask the court to sentence Poulos to a minimum term of 50 years behind bars. Poulos has maintained his innocence throughout and stated his intention to plead not guilty at trial. The trial proceedings are currently ongoing and are expected to conclude in the coming months.
In a bone-chilling turn of events, the tale of Sasha Samsudean unfolds. Imagine this. She returns home, the night's laughter still echoing in her memory, caught on surveillance cameras in downtown Orlando, Florida. Little did anyone know, within mere hours, she would be discovered lifeless in her own bed, her murder shrouded in mystery. But brace yourself, because the harrowing truth lurking in the shadows is more terrifying than you could ever fathom. It's a grim reminder that even in a world of electronic locks, night guards, and surveillance cameras, our safety is far from guaranteed. Meet 27-year-old Sasha Samsudean. Sasha grew up in Central Florida and soon after graduating from the University of Florida, found herself a job in Orlando as the social media manager for Pearson, an educational services firm. She was also a regular volunteer with the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando. Here is Sasha promoting apartment complexes as part of her volunteer work.
Hi, I'm Sasha with 407 Apartments TV. I'm here at the Edge Orlando Apartments near UCF, so let's go check out what they have to offer. So I'm here with Kyle. Can you tell me what's the most unique thing about your community?
Well, we have our 4-4 that we're going to be looking at.
If you're not familiar with sunny Orlando, it's also home to over a dozen theme parks and nightlife so lively, it's earned the city a reputation as the dance floor of Central Florida. It was here that Sasha moved after graduating, working first in the marketing department of Pearson, before quickly moving up the ranks to the position of director of operations. A co-worker said people often underestimated Sasha because of her looks. She was a highly intelligent and driven young woman. The warm, easy manner you see on camera is also a true reflection of Sasha's character. Her friend said she was warm, bubbly, the life of the party, and full of enthusiasm.
I've attended the past 2 years of Lisapalooza, and let me tell you, it's a great event. As a supplier, even on this side of the industry, I get to spend an entire day with my clients learning about their side of the business. What could be better than that?
By 2015, Sasha had found herself an apartment worthy of promoting in one of her own videos. Uptown Place on North Orange Avenue had a gym, a pool, landscaped gardens, and state-of-the-art security. Each apartment was fitted with a quick-set digital deadbolt lock, accessible only by code. There were also surveillance cameras, entrance doors that required key fobs, and a night guard. Sasha was thrilled to have her own place and had no hesitations about living alone. After all, if there was anywhere you could rest easy in your bed at night, it was at Uptown Place. Or at least, so she thought. Friday, October 16th, 2015, was the last day of the Orlando City soccer season, and every soccer fan in the city was going to be out watching the game. Sasha and her friends decked themselves out in purple in support of the Orlando City Lions and headed out to watch the match. After the Lions won, the group moved to a venue called Sidebar to celebrate, and then to the Attic, a well-known Orlando dance club. Around 12:30 a.m., Sasha told her friend Anthony that she was leaving. He didn't know whether she was going home or to another bar, but that was typical of a night out. Friends would come and go, sometimes meeting up later that same evening. This, he thought, was just like any other night. The next morning, Anthony sat in a cafe where he and Sasha were meant to be having breakfast. Sasha hadn't shown up and was not answering her phone. Figuring she was hungover and sleeping it off, Anthony ate his food and left. Several hours passed with still no word from Sasha. He contacted two of her closest friends, Katie and Megan, who also had not heard from Sasha. Sasha had a baby shower to attend that day, and it was totally out of character for her to be unreachable this long. The three friends decided to swing by her apartment in the parking garage at Uptown Place. They found Sasha's car, and the gift she had bought for the baby shower was still in the back seat. After slipping through the front entrance of the complex, they banged on the door of Sasha's third-floor apartment. No one answered. A sick feeling was now kicking in. The friends rang local hospitals and police stations thinking that maybe she had been in an accident. No one had seen a girl matching Sasha's description. Anthony called 911. When police arrived at Uptown Place that evening, they were met by the on-site security guard, Stephen Duxbury. He was off duty at the time, but knew without asking why they were there and quickly obtained permission for them to enter Sasha's apartment. With Sasha's friends waiting outside, officers did a quick search inside. Everything was in perfect order. There were no signs of struggle and no signs of Sasha either. Then, one of the officers took a closer look at the master bedroom. The comforter had been rolled up into an odd tube shape, and there was something else too, something spine-chilling. Locks of long dark hair were coming from the end of the comforter, and on one side a limp hand protruded. They had found Sasha Samsudean. Sasha had been violently beaten, raped, and strangled. Later, the medical examiner who performed her autopsy would report never having seen such a severe neck fracture. Sasha had fought her attacker hard. Her arms and hands were covered with defensive wounds. Just one look at the officers' faces as they came out of the apartment was enough for Sasha's friends to know that she was dead. In the coming days, their grief and anger, and that of the devastated Samsudean family, would only grow stronger with each new revelation.
The suspicious death of a 27-year-old Orlando woman. Sasha Samsudean's body was found Saturday night inside of her apartment at Uptown Place on North Orange Avenue. Right now, police are not releasing many details, but friends and neighbors say they were stunned to hear about it.
Typical girl, just nice, fun-loving girl. She wasn't too boastful, too loud, just a nice quiet type, She seemed to get along with everybody.
I guess kind of nervous because we don't really know how she was killed or if we should be concerned that there's someone dangerous living in our building.
An analysis of the crime scene revealed no signs of forced entry. It seemed that whoever had killed Sasha was someone she'd unwittingly welcomed into her home. Her purse, phone, and key fob for the building were missing. The apartment smelled strongly of bleach, and an examination of Sasha's body revealed that cleaning products had been poured onto her skin in what they believed was an attempt at destroying DNA evidence. The sheets on her bed also had patches of discoloration where someone had poured the cleaning product, but whoever had tried to cover their tracks had not been as thorough as they thought. The toilet seat had been left up, with 2 thumbprints found on the underside of the lid. Another was found on her nightstand. A condom wrapper had been left on the floor by the bed. Police dusted the hardwood floors throughout the apartment, revealing several size 9 shoe prints. DNA had meanwhile been retrieved from Sasha's chest. 33-year-old Stephen Duxbury had been a security guard at the Uptown Apartments for just over 5 months. Newly married, he was a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and had acquired his security guard license earlier that year. During his interview, he told police that Sasha had arrived at the entrance of Uptown Place around 1:45 a.m. the previous morning with 2 other women, but no ID and no key fob. He chuckled to himself. He was used to these sorts of situations, drunks who had forgotten their fob keys. But the 2 young women were extremely concerned that Sasha should get in safely. He reminded them that he wasn't allowed to let anyone into the building without proof that they were a resident. When a male resident who arrived at the entrance seemed to know Sasha, he turned a blind eye when Sasha had slipped in behind him. He couldn't allow drunks to wander around the building, though. He told police he searched several floors before locating Sasha outside her apartment, trying and failing to put her code into the door's keypad. She asked him to walk with her to her car to see if her fob was inside. Exasperated at having to babysit a drunk, he relented and escorted her to the parking garage. But before they reached her car, she suddenly remembered the code once again, though it was wrong. He said he'd do a favor and leave her to keep trying while he did another sweep of the building. If she hadn't gotten it right by the time he was back, they needed to come up with an alternative arrangement. When he returned, she'd gone. He figured she must have worked out the code, but later that morning she had walked by him in the hall with a man he didn't recognize. Police now focused on corroborating Stephen's account. They needed more information on Sasha's movements that night. Uptown Place was just over a mile from the Attic nightclub, and the streets were full of CCTV cameras. CCTV footage taken from the street outside the Attic nightclub showed Sasha alone and walking unsteadily through the crowd. In footage from the next camera, she had been joined by 2 women. No one in Sasha's circle recognized the women. Police released the footage and issued a request for the unidentified women to come forward. Within hours, Julia Goff and Haley Messmore had contacted the police and were giving their statements. The young women explained they had noticed Sasha while they were waiting for an Uber. She was stumbling and clearly inebriated, and at some point had been about to get into a car with a group of men. Concerned for her safety, the girls approached her. They quickly realized she had no phone, no purse, and was in no state to get herself home. They invited Sasha to share their Uber with them back to her apartment. It was an act of kindness by 2 well-meaning strangers. But in light of the monstrous acts that would follow, their actions would come to be seen as something almost heroic. Once outside Uptown Place, the women waited with Sasha as she tried but failed to enter the building. It was then that a security guard approached and refused Sasha entry without proof of residence. But when another tenant arrived home, Sasha slipped through the door behind him. It was the last they saw of Sasha. As for the security guard, he re-entered the building a short time later, and assuming she'd be safe, they left. The women's account matched Stephen's. Meanwhile, though other leads had presented themselves, the savagery of Sasha's attack suggested it was possibly a crime of passion. Police turned their focus onto interviewing any men in Sasha's life with whom she had been romantically involved. Taylor Unsinger had been in a relationship with Sasha for 2 years. During his police interview, he said they still spoke regularly and that he had privately thought they may one day get back together.
Was there any talk about trying to get back together?
We didn't really talk about it, but it was something that I always thought that we would, down the road.
On the night of the murder, he had been working a bar shift. He said his parents had been staying with him, and he had come home and gone to bed around 1 a.m. His whereabouts were later corroborated, and he would be eliminated from the investigation when his DNA proved not to be a match of the killers. Taylor's interview had provided other useful information, however. He had once known the password to Sasha's iPad, and this new information helped the police to gain access to it. Sasha's iPad had been found at her apartment, and it shared data with her iPhone, including her messages. On the night Sasha had been murdered, several messages had been exchanged between Sasha and someone by the name of Ben. At 5:12 a.m., Sasha had sent a text message containing one word, Ben. He'd replied 16 minutes later, but she never responded. It was the last message she'd sent and the last activity that had taken place on any of her devices. A man called Ben Roebuck had already contacted the police after hearing of Sasha's murder. Police now called him in for an interview. Ben told police that he and Sasha had known each other since high school and had dated during their college years. They had been good friends ever since. He'd last seen Sasha the previous Thursday night when they had been at a bar.
And you haven't seen her since Thursday night?
Correct.
When's the last time you spoke to her?
I received a message from her at 5:12 a.m. on Saturday morning. That was are you talking about on the phone or via text message or anything?
On the phone or text message?
Yeah, text message. The last kind of back and forth we had was around 1 in the morning, but I got a message from her at 5:12 a.m. Just said my name, and then I responded about 16 minutes later, and I never heard back from her after that.
Okay, that was Saturday morning?
On the night of the murder, they'd messaged several times about potentially meeting at a friend's place. Despite the eerie last message, Ben's account of his movements also checked out, and his DNA was also not a match. He was eliminated from the investigation. By now, the security footage from Uptown Place had been retrieved from an off-site security company, and officers sifted through every minute of it. What they would find would horrify every resident of Uptown Place and cause the case to hit the national headlines. The footage shows Sasha entering Uptown Place at 1:46 a.m. Moments later, an unknown male appears behind her. He can be heard on the video asking her if she's all right, to which she replies with a cheerful, "Yes, thank you." She then heads up the stairs, and for the next 20 minutes she is out of view of any camera. At 1:48 a.m., Stephen Duxbury re-enters, looking for Sasha. Sasha, meanwhile, can be seen stumbling up another flight of stairs. At 2:06 a.m., she is picked up on a different camera. There is the clanging of Sasha's shoes through the stairwell as she runs up the stairs, apparently to escape Stephen, who she believes is going to throw her off the premises. A few seconds later, he can be seen following stealthily behind her. At 2:25 a.m., she appears again, only this time she's walking with Stephen down the flight of stairs to the first-floor parking garage, and they're chatting amicably. They exit the building before appearing again moments later at 2:27 a.m. They take the flight of stairs up to the third-floor garage and then reappear again when Sasha apparently remembers the code. This is the last footage taken of Sasha. No footage could be found of Sasha with any mystery man. At 5:05 a.m., Stephen is seen entering the third-floor parking garage, then re-entering at 5:13 a.m. It seemed that the case had reached a dead end, but then officers spotted something odd. At 6:36 a.m., Stephen Duxbury is captured entering the second-floor garage, carrying 3 white trash bags. He re-enters the building 2 minutes later before leaving with his shoulder bag and belongings at 6:40 a.m. Police asked the building's property manager if taking out the trash was usually part of a security guard's duties. It wasn't. Stephen had also told officers that his shift ended at 6 a.m. He had mentioned needing to spend a few minutes writing up a daily report, but that was unlikely to take 40 minutes. There's also a 90-minute black hole between 5:14 a.m. and 6:36 a.m., during which Stephen could not be located on a single camera in the building. Police obtained a search warrant for Stephen's home and asked him to come in for another interview and a polygraph test. Before administering the polygraph, the examiner asked Stephen if he had ever been arrested. Stephen now mentioned that he had when he was a juvenile, but it was a misunderstanding. In the following bizarre account, he explains that he was falsely accused of assault by a girl with serious emotional issues. He'd then been a true hero and pleaded guilty in order to save his best friend and the girl's reputation.
Nah, basically it was just, my best friend's older sister was babysitting my siblings because they wouldn't listen to me. My mother was a single mother raising 4 kids. We lived in a farm, and this is when I lived in Otis, Massachusetts. Kid that lived down the road kept sneaking over to our farm and opening all the doors, letting our animals out in the middle of the night, and we lived on a major highway. I had to take the dogs out to the barn. She came with me to help me because I had a golden retriever and another dog. And while we were out there, I had forgotten to plug in the cord that gave power to the barn in the house, so it was pitch black, and I thought I heard something upstairs. And I thought, oh God, that little shit's upstairs. So, not really thinking, I went over to the wall of tools, and I grabbed the first thing that seemed sense to me, which was a shovel head that had broken off the staff. Mm-hmm. I go up the stairs, and she's following me. She was about a year or 2 older than I was, and, she's kind of a little nervous about what's going on, so I'm like, okay, stay here at the top of the stairs. If anyone tries to run by you, stop them. She's like, okay. So I go walking around, but I can barely see anything. I'm walking, I hear floorboards creak, I see a shadow move out of the corner of my eye, turn around, upside the back of her head. Oh, she had moved and followed me. I didn't know. Okay, that's a simple mistake. Yeah, well, that simple mistake, unfortunately, went right down the worst roads possible. She freaks out, and I find out later that's because she had been raped by her 3 previous boyfriends and her uncle. So she had some severe issues with that. Mm-hmm. Her mother hated my mother because her kids felt more comfortable talking to my mother than her. So she forced Becky to press charges against me. State troopers in the area basically assumed I was trying to rape her or something. And then it just went from there.
Here's the accurate version. Stephen had hit his best friend's older sister over the head with a shovel while she'd been babysitting him and his siblings. When she had come to, she found him choking and kissing her. He'd freaked out and fled. He was later convicted of aggravated assault. Stephen's character starts to take shape the longer he talks. When asked about his medical history, he rattled off an extensive list of medical issues he claimed to have suffered, from stabbing incidents, wisdom teeth removal, an emergency appendectomy, a mystery cramping disorder, kidney stone removal, whooping cough and lung issues, dizzy spells, an anxiety disorder, and migraines. He then rattled off the endless difficulties he'd suffered as a security guard, managing drunks and people determined to break the rules by swimming in the pool out of hours and picking fights. He presents himself as a morally superior but embattled enforcer of law and order, simply doing his best to fulfill the duties despite the many lowlifes attempting to thwart him. The truth, in fact, was that residents had been complaining about Stephen since the moment he'd arrived. The complaints had ranged from harassment to the downright creepy. One female resident complained that Stephen had been acting sketchy and had followed her back to her apartment. These complaints had been submitted to Vital Security, as well as to Uptown Place and Condominium Concepts, but no action had been taken. Stephen then took his polygraph. He was asked if he had ever set foot inside Sasha's apartment, if he'd caused her death, or ever removed anything from Sasha's apartment. He answered no to all, and all his answers indicated deception. One question in particular he stumbled on when asked if he knew how Sasha died. He was offered up a series of possibilities when it came to whether she was choked. His answer indicated extreme levels of deception. Police had never released any information to the public about how Sasha had been killed.
You know, based on this, there's something going on here, okay? And so maybe she somehow talked you into coming in. Well, the chart's saying that you did, this is huge. And this is, did you enter her apartment? No, I didn't. All right, well, I mean, the only thing, honestly, the situation is bothering me. I mean, about the whole thing about her. I mean, I'll be straight up. This whole situation has been bothering me. And just thinking about what may have happened is just, well, without even being a polygraph examiner, you were able to show me each question you had issue with. And every single one of them on every single chart was the relevant questions. So that means there's something there. There's something that you're not telling the complete truth about. You have no control over that. That's why this works so well. Now, let me show you another thing. One more thing. What's that say? Significant reactions. Probably this result was produced by a truthful person. 0.003% chance that the result was produced by a truthful person. Damn. 0.003% chance that you were truthful on this stuff today.
Officers now interviewed Stephen and asked him about the trash bags. He said he'd seen them on the second floor after his shift had ended and thought he would do the cleaners a favor. Here's a glimpse of the extraordinary arrogance and delusional moral superiority that is Stephen Duxbury.
We were tracking her from downtown when she's trying to pick up guys. So we know she wasn't flirting with me. I mean, other than, you know, leaning against me in the hallway because she could barely stand. But she wasn't flirting with me. She never flirted with you? No. She never asked you to come inside the apartment? No. If she had asked me to come inside the apartment, I would have told her no. But this is the problem, according to what I'm looking at. I know, but I've been asked by other residents in the past too to come into their apartments, and I've also told them no. I had one offer me sexual favors, and I declined. The only person who knows that other than me is my supervisor, because we didn't want to embarrass the resident because he was drunk at the time, or possibly just lonely and maybe tipsy, I don't know. I take my job seriously, and when my job says I'm not allowed to go into someone's apartment, I don't go into someone's apartment. Yes, I've been bothered by this since the moment I saw and heard about the situation. It's been bothering me. I've been having a hard time sleeping because of this. I've been terrified of what's going to happen when I go to work tonight because I know I'm going to be having residents asking me questions. I might even have newspaper people trying to corner me. Now, this whole thing is bothering me. And I knew this was going to end up happening because this is not the first time I've had police officers assume I did the worst thing.
Okay. I'm not trying to get you to say anything that didn't happen. I'm just telling you the way it works. You understand what I'm saying? You didn't want to hurt her.
I didn't hurt her. Christine, can we at least agree that you did go inside? Now, you may not have heard her. I did not go inside of her apartment.
There's a lot of physical evidence.
Even after she invited you in? She didn't invite me into her apartment. And if we're going to continue on this line of discussion, I think we're done here.
The interview concluded with an indignant and condescending lecture from Stephen, who presented himself as a morally superior but embattled enforcer of law and order. Police later found that Stephen had scratch marks up and down both arms and one mark that looked like a potential bite mark. He claimed that he had a nervous condition which caused skin irritations. A search of Stephen's apartment uncovered a pair of size 9 Skechers sneakers that matched the shoe print on the floor of Sasha's apartment. 3 days later, the thumbprints under the toilet seat were confirmed to be a match to the right thumb of Stephen Duxbury. The trash bags Stephen could be seen carrying in the surveillance footage were the same as those Sasha used in her apartment. And then the final damning evidence. His DNA was a match for that taken from Sasha's chest. The only real question that remained was how Stephen entered her apartment. An examination of Stephen's phone revealed that from 4:56 a.m. until 5:01 a.m., he'd searched for how to override a quick-set digital lock, the type of lock on Sasha's door. He can be seen entering the third-floor parking garage shortly after this and re-entering at 5:13 a.m. At 5:12 a.m., Sasha had sent her last message to her ex-boyfriend Ben, simply saying his name. She'd never had a chance to write anymore. Police believe that Stephen overrode her security lock shortly after 5:13 a.m. and quietly entered Sasha's apartment while she lay in bed. He then sexually assaulted and beat her before strangling her to death. He had attempted to clean the evidence away with bleach before removing what he could in trash bags, which he placed in his car and disposed of later. The discovery that a man who'd been entrusted with protecting the residents of the building was, in fact, the monster they needed protection from was horrifying. How had he hidden in plain sight for so long? And was there anything that could have been done to prevent this horrific crime? Sasha's parents blamed Vital Security, the security company that employed Stephen Duxbury. Stephen had a criminal past, and other residents' complaints had been ignored. But the company argued that Duxbury had passed the state-level FBI background check. The family also filed a lawsuit against Spectrum Brands, the company which manufactured the quick-set lock on Sasha's door. Criticism over flaws in the lock and the ease with which they could be manipulated had been appearing in news articles since a 2013 article in Wired magazine. Sasha, along with every individual with a quick-set lock, had been dangerously vulnerable to a forced entry attack. The company, however, argued that the lock on Sasha's door was most likely faulty, but this could not be proved since it had been discarded. In January 2016, Kwikset redesigned the smart key deadbolt. Stephen Duxbury was arrested in November of 2015 and charged with first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary to an occupied dwelling. Orlando Police Chief John Mina called the murder a crime of opportunity by a man working in what should have been the protective service of the residents of Uptown Place apartments. This crime could have happened in any apartment complex in any city in the United States. Following a 7-day trial and just 4 hours of deliberation, Stephen Duxbury was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the murder of Sasha Samsudean. During their statements, Sasha's parents, Ken and Tara Samsudean, extended their sympathies to Stephen's mother. 2 sets of parents had lost their children, they said. Ken and Tara Samsudean continue to honor their daughter's legacy by working to help other families deal with the grief that comes from being a victim of violent crime. Tara Samsudean said, "It took me 18 months before I could feel any emotion about what happened, and when I started to cry, it was bucketfuls of tears that came." If you're hooked by this story, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about it. And hey, if you want to stay in the loop for more mind-blowing cases, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay safe out there and keep an eye out.
It's just a man parking his SUV in the lot of a small-town motel. Nothing unusual. The middle-aged man seems to be concerned with the appearance of his vehicle, taking extra care to polish it a bit here and there. He certainly doesn't seem to have a worry in the world as he walks away. That's actually quite surprising, since the man, Daniel Printz of Bostic, North Carolina, had just brutally murdered an 80-year-old woman less than an hour before. No one who would have seen him walking down the street to another nearby parking lot would have any idea that a serial killer was casually moving among them, satisfied with his kill and enjoying a warm, sunny day. No one would have suspected that he was on his way to put that woman's body in a shallow grave in the mountains. This was at least his 4th kill. Thanks to some carelessness on his part, it would be his last. Come with us as we look into the sinister case of serial killer Daniel Printz.
If you tell him to turn that off, I will talk to you a little more freely.
Before we start, we want to express our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of Edna Suttles and the other victims involved in this tragic case. The date was August 27th, 2021, in the small town of Travelers Rest, near the border between North and South Carolina. A scenic rural area in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, this Greenville County, South Carolina location is a quiet, out-of-the-way place and made a perfect hunting ground for 59-year-old Daniel Printz. Printz, working as a handyman, had been employed by Edna Suttles to do some work on her home, a repair or two here or there. A relationship between them developed, a friendship that brought Printz into her realm of trust. An 80-year-old retired businesswoman and the owner of a One Freedom bail bonding, Edna was a fixture in the community, vibrant and active. She took care to check up on and assist a number of elderly people in her community. On this very morning, she was scheduled to sit with a homebound friend, a friend whose family was counting on her that day. Edna left her home that morning but never showed up at her intended destination.
Greenville County 911, what's the location of your emergency?
The thing is, a fitter was supposed to show up to be with my mom today, and she's in her 80s, and she didn't show up. We've come to her house, and we can't get nobody to the door or anything. Her name is Edna Suttles. It's not like her. She shows up like clockwork. So something's wrong.
In almost all jurisdictions, there's an unspoken rule that a competent adult is generally not considered missing until they've been out of contact for at least 24 hours. Very recently, however, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office had decided to change that policy.
Initially, from a Sheriff's Office standpoint, our missing persons were reported by phone. We would take a report by phone. The Suttles case, we changed some things here, and the Suttles case was kind of in time with that, if you will, where we were going to respond to every missing person. Usually it was, there had to be some extenuating circumstances, some type of medical issue.
Members of the Sheriff's Office were dispatched to make a wellness check on Suttles, but could get no answer at the door of her home.
After obtaining a warrant, they entered the property. Inside, they did not find her, any evidence of foul play, or any clues as to her whereabouts. Her vehicle was not at the residence. That vehicle, a champagne-coloured Jeep Grand Cherokee, would prove to be the starting point of suspicions that something terrible may have befallen the woman.
Miss Suttles was pretty well known in the northern part of this county. She was a bail bonding agent. She was a tough lady, street smart, had a great reputation here in our area. She was certainly nobody's fool.
Edna was gone. The police put out alerts through all the local media. They described her vehicle, gave its license plate number, and warned that she could be in need of immediate medical attention. They could not have known that Edna had already been killed and taken across a nearby state line. It was 7 days before the Jeep was found by an officer of a local police department on September 3rd in the parking lot of the Best Western Hotel in the town of Travelers Rest. The Jeep had been backed into a parking space, concealing the license plate from anyone just driving through the lot. After determining that Edna had not checked into the hotel, members of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office scanned the hotel security footage for the day of the disappearance. They found what they were looking for: footage of the Jeep being driven into the parking lot, and the person who got out was definitely not Edna Suttles. A man got out of the car and then began to wipe it down, paying particular attention to the inside of the front seat passenger's door, and then the door frame and quarter panels. He left and then came back quickly to give it one more wipe down, and then he walked away, leaving the property. Any number of missing persons cases turn out to have nothing sinister about them. Some are just a person taking a short trip without telling anyone. Sometimes it can come from a mental health crisis. Sometimes just a romantic rendezvous that ran a little long. At this moment, though, investigators realised that any pretense of Suttles willfully being out of touch with those that she knew was probably gone. This missing persons case had taken a serious and unsettling turn. Investigators now had to determine who the mysterious man was and what happened prior to the 1:46 p.m. timestamp on the security video. There were hours still unaccounted for from that morning when Edna Suttles presumably left her home to visit and sit with a friend. In this day and age, security cameras are nearly everywhere, and investigators began searching for the pieces of the puzzle that were unfolding before them. Now, with a date and time to work backward from, it was a matter of finding the footage and canvassing locations in the small town until they could pick up a trail. Working diligently, law enforcement was able to piece together video from around the area that gave a timeline for the day's events. At 9:22 a.m. on the morning of August 27, 2021, a security camera video shows a Chevrolet Cruiser pull into the parking lot at a Food Lion supermarket in Travelers Rest. Just 8 minutes later, at 9:30 a.m., Edna Suttles drives away from her home in her champagne-coloured Jeep Grand Cherokee. Security camera footage from a nearby antique store showed the time of departure and initial direction of travel. At 9:38 a.m., a man matching the appearance of the individual spotted leaving her Jeep at the Best Western purchases a pack of strawberry yogurt cups at Food Lion. The man uses the store rewards card, and investigators now had his name, identifying him as Daniel Printz. A minute later, Edna Suttles pulls into the grocery store parking lot and parks her vehicle near Printz's. Footage shows Printz holding a grocery bag and gesturing to Suttles. He then goes to his own car and retrieves a small bag. He gets into the front passenger seat of Suttles' Jeep. Minutes later, the Jeep leaves the parking lot with the pair inside. 4 hours passed before there was any more video evidence. Then, at 1:43 p.m., Suttles' Jeep is seen driving away from her residence back in the direction of the Food Lion supermarket. Minutes later, at 2:02 p.m., the Jeep pulls into a different part of the parking lot than before. Printz is shown exiting the Jeep from the driver's side door and walking across the parking lot to the Chevy Cruze he had arrived in. Printz then moves his Cruze alongside the Jeep in the parking lot, front passenger door to front passenger door. He gets out and moves something from one vehicle to the other. A closer analysis shows that it is a person with the starkly blonde hair of Suttles. Printz then drives Suttles' Jeep away, and the blonde-haired person is left unmoving inside of Printz's car. 5 minutes later, Printz parks the car at the Best Western parking lot, wipes it down, and walks back in the direction of the Food Lion parking lot. At 2:14 p.m., Printz gets back into his Chevy, cruises with the unmoving Suttles and drives away. The trail of video evidence goes cold from there, but Printz's purchaser led right to his door. The rewards card information provided an address in Bostic, North Carolina, about 70 miles away, in the rural area of Rutherford County, North Carolina. So, who was this man? Daniel Glenn Printz. What connection could he have with Edna, and how did he come to meet with her on that fateful day? A native of Michigan, Printz had moved to the North Carolina mountains a few years before, making his home in one of the many hollers in Rutherford County. It's a friendly place, but one where a person who might want privacy is apt to find plenty of it. Printz and his wife, KK, settled in, and he began working as a handyman, often for elderly single or widowed ladies. He had a knack for the work and also for developing relationships with those women, gaining their trust and befriending them. Printz, however, harboured a troubled past, one that he didn't bring up. As a youth, he had joined the military to get away from a life that was leading him down the wrong path. The stint in the military was short-lived, as was his avoidance of a life of crime. His criminal records showed charges of assault and battery, as well as firearms violations. Most disturbing was his conviction in Michigan in 1997 for kidnapping a woman. He was sentenced to 13 to 30 years in prison for the crime, and served 12 years of that sentence before being paroled. His parole was terminated 2 years later, and he moved out of the state not long after that, before ending up in North Carolina. Detectives now had not just videos and a timeline, but they had the name of a man with a history of kidnapping. Quickly, the Greenville County Sheriff's Department contacted their counterparts in the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, just across the state line. Probable cause for auto theft had been established, at the very least, and a warrant to arrest Printz and search his property was quickly granted. The Rutherford County Sheriff was more than willing to assist in serving that warrant. Printz surrendered with remarkable calm to the large number of heavily armed officers who had arrived at his property.
Totally cooperating, just relax. You're not doing anything, and I'll cooperate. Are we good? Stand up on your feet. Stay right there. Yeah. Sir, I will be very cooperative. All right, let's try that, please. So.
He was quickly taken into custody and on to the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, where he was initially interviewed. It was obvious from the beginning that Printz wanted to run the interview and control the narrative. He was arrogant and seemed unfazed by what was happening, so investigators let him talk.
I'll talk to you about August 27th, 2021 of this year.
What day of the week was that?
Oh, it was a Friday.
Okay.
Where are you on that day? What's your typical Fridays like?
Some Fridays I go do jobs, some Fridays I stay home, some Fridays I go look at jobs, I do all sorts of things. Days run together for me because I don't have a set schedule.
Fair enough. When as the jobs come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so specifically the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
What, 2 weeks ago? Do you remember where you were at?
Not specifically.
Where do you think you were at?
I've been going all over the place. I've been back and forth to Charlotte. I've been down to South Carolina.
Yeah. Like, where's your jobs in South Carolina taking you?
Actually, I was down to Traveler's Rest, but I don't know if it was Friday or Thursday. I know I'd been there earlier that week.
Okay. But you don't remember which day specifically?
No, it was either Thursday or Friday.
What kind of job were you working on?
I wasn't.
You wasn't?
I wasn't. This lady had talked to me several times. I'd been down to her house 2 or 3 times. We kind of got to be friends. This woman has so many damn problems, mostly her daughter.
Yeah.
And what she did is she had me looking at ductwork that she wanted done because somebody had done ductwork for her and she was suing them because they didn't do all the ductwork or something. She would call me and have me come down there.
Okay.
And she was constantly having problems. She said she needed to have money at one point in time to help her daughter because her daughter was in jail. Then she needed money another time because, what was it the next time? She was hiring a private investigator because her son-in-law she talked to me all kinds of stuff about it. We got to be pretty good friends about stuff like that. But she kept seeming like she was blowing me off on actually doing any work for her. She was going to have a guy come out and wash her house, and I said, well, if I'm coming down here to look at other stuff, I got a power washer. I can wash your house and clean out your eaves for a couple $100. She was going to have me do it. Packed my power washer up, went down there. Never did the work because I don't have the money right now. I got to sell a bunch of jewelry. I got to sell a bunch of stuff to go ahead and get more money for a private investigator. Then she wanted a different private investigator because she didn't like the one she had. So it was like one excuse after the other.
How'd you meet her initially?
Years ago.
Okay.
Years ago, it was somebody had given me her name or number, or my name and number. I get passed around a lot.
Okay.
So it was a years ago thing.
That's pretty awesome. Your name made all the way down to Traveler's Rest, South Carolina. That's good reputation.
Yeah.
Solid work. All right, so
why are we?
What you're telling us is that's not you on the 27th. Food Line parking lot, Traveler's Rest.
I don't think so.
That's not you.
That's me. Where's that?
Food Line, August 27th, 2021, 9:23.
Okay.
22 seconds. Ringing a bell?
Yep. Yeah, I went down to Food Line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were you doing down there that day?
She wanted me to look at some stuff at her house.
Okay.
And she picked me up at Food Line because she wanted me with her when she was gonna go meet some guy for God dang it, private investigator.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about that.
She wanted me to meet her down there.
Okay.
She was nervous because she says, I'm not sure I trust this guy. And she knows I've been in the military. And she says, will you meet me? And I go, yeah. And I said, where do you want to meet? She says, well, he's been talking to me. I guess I'm supposed to meet him at a restaurant. And I'm supposed to meet him down near Food Lion.
Okay.
So I went down to Food Lion, and she met me. And he didn't show up where we went to next. And she had been trying to get a hold of him. And we went to her house for about 2 hours. And then we went back to Food Lion. And it just...
She just dropped you off and you went home and you just noticed something about PI?
Well, she wanted me to see if this guy was going to meet her where he was supposed to meet her.
Do you know where?
There was a hotel lobby that he had finally said, meet me at the hotel.
Okay.
She says, drive up there and see if he's there. And I drove up there, and things are starting to sound really squirrely to me. And then she finally said, just drop me off at home. And if you drop me off at home, my daughter will pick me up. And I said, because I got to get going. I can't be doing this all day.
So that's you all coming down 25, you and her together? Back towards the hotel?
It could be.
Okay, because that's her car. That's about 13:45 on the 27th.
Okay.
So you're with her there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not saying yeah. I'm just saying that could be her.
Yeah, here's a different angle. But I mean, you know, we've watched this car, right?
Okay.
Here's y'all in the hotel parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh look, there's y'all backing in.
Yep.
Yeah, a couple of different copies of it. Backing in.
Yeah.
Oh look, you get out. Nobody else gets out.
I told you that.
You're walking around the car.
Yeah.
You wipe the entire car down.
Because I was worried.
You were worried. There's you walking across the parking lot in front of Little Caesars.
Mm-hmm.
And there's you getting back into your car and driving away.
Oh, she's with me.
Look, man. Where's that?
I don't have a clue.
We need to know. Listen, Dan, okay? You are a good dude. I honestly do believe that you screwed up years and years ago.
Okay.
And now...
Can I look at these?
What?
I just want to look and see what you're talking about.
Let's you need to hear this, man. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're not a bad guy.
Right.
Nobody is saying that you're some evil, twisted dude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Where's right now? Her family is desperately looking for her.
She's missing right now.
Yes, Dan, where is Ed?
I don't have a clue.
Yes,
I dropped her off at her house.
Dan, please listen. You did not drop her off at her house. We have followed that car the entire day, up and down 25.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of minutes that are unaccounted for that are not by her house. Okay?
Which car? Mine or hers?
Dan, stop playing games. You know what we're
When I
talking
got,
about.
okay, I can help you here.
Okay.
You gotta give me a second. You gotta let me answer the questions when they're asked. When I dropped her vehicle off looking for the guy, she said she wanted me to take her and drive around in my vehicle. So I left her vehicle. I went down to Food Lion and she was in my vehicle with me. And I dropped her off at home.
Dan, we watched the video. She is not.
The car sits there.
It sits there, man.
No, not in her car.
No, her.
My car.
We watched
I dropped
you go
her
back
off
to
with
Food
my
Lion.
car.
You did not drop anyone off, man.
I picked her back up. She sat in my car at Food Lion and I went back and got her.
No, you did not. When are you trying to say? Please explain. Explain yourself. Please explain at which point that we must have missed in the video that you dropped her off. Why that your vehicle never went back to her house. We have your vehicle, that silver car, going straight up 25 and not stopping at her house.
That's not true.
It is true.
I
Dan.
stopped at her house.
What's your wife going to think about this?
Well, my wife would be very upset if I had done something, but I didn't, and I don't know where Edna is.
I think you do, Dan.
No. I don't know where Edna is.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Dan.
Let's go back to why you wiped the car down. What you said you were worried about what?
The only thing I did was because I knew I'd been in and out of her car all the time with her. I'm like, there is no way in hell I'm going to just leave this thing here because she's got somebody that's after her.
It's not making sense of it. I mean, you're the last person to be in a vehicle you wiped out of a lady that's missing.
That sounds really fucked up.
It does. It does. That's why we're here. But and then it's fucked up as it sounds. We're having to do it right. We're going to do it right but we got guys down there now that are homing in about where we think she might be.
His story rambled, and it didn't really add up, but the holes weren't big enough to catch him just yet. As the interrogation went on, deputies were still at work searching his property. The officers there found a formidable arsenal, including 2 AR-15 variants and up to 20 handguns, plus a large stockpile of ammunition. The serial numbers on both the AR-15s had been removed. The removal of serial numbers is also illegal, building even more trouble for the man. The firearms violations immediately upgraded this investigation to the federal level, meaning that Printz could be held longer as the investigation continued. As the search of Printz's house continued, more damning evidence turned up, but not evidence dealing directly with the disappearance of Edna Suttles. This evidence would end up bringing down a serial killer who had lived unnoticed by the surrounding community for years, and whose crimes were unknown even to the wife he shared his home with. Deputies discovered among his possessions the driver's license and passport of Nancy Rigo, age 66, a woman from nearby Charlotte, North Carolina. Certainly, here's the continuation. Nancy Rigo, a widow, had been missing since 2017 and had only made sporadic email and text contacts with her family members since that time. Rigo, or the person who may have been posing as her online, always refused to meet directly with family members. When asked, the same family members would verify that Rigo and Printz were supposed to be in a relationship during this time. Her wallet was also found among his possessions, along with financial records that indicated Printz's address was now hers. Printz was also found to have Rigo's bank card in his wallet. It's not hard to see the possibility that Rigo was dead and that Printz had been using her money. This rose to the suspicions of law enforcement. A separate search warrant had been issued now to look for additional information on Rigo while the search for Settles continued. The search allowed for the seizure of the aforementioned items, plus a purse that had belonged to Rigo's mother, Dolores Sellers Gore, who had passed away in 2017 from what had been called natural causes at the time. Prescription bottles with Rigo's name on them were also found, ones for cyclobenzaprine, tramadol, and lorazepam, all filled in 2017. A black bag was found with more sinister contents. That bag contained zip ties, a taser device, lubricant, and crushed pills in a bag labelled Ativan, the brand name for lorazepam, a strong sedative that can be used to slow breathing and even cause death when combined with alcohol or some other substances. In custody, Printz was playing for time and maintaining his innocence when it came to Settle's disappearance. On October 9th, as Printz sat in jail, his time ran out. Printz's wife decided it was time to leave and began efforts to put the home and surrounding property on the market. She enlisted a couple of friends to help with cleaning up the property and wrangling together a few chickens and other domesticated birds that were living on the property. One of those friends, while walking along the outer edges of the property, spied a large white bee box deep in the woods at the very corner of the land.
KK Printz had been unaware of its existence and the contents that her friend found within. She quickly called law enforcement to search the box after obtaining another search warrant. Deputies from the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department found Settle's purse, Jeep keys, rope, zip ties, and a variety of other small items belonging to her. A single opened cup of yogurt, of the same type and flavor that Printz had purchased on that fateful day, was also inside the box. Nearby was a vehicle's back floorboard panel, a black plastic bag, and a tarp. The floor panel would match one missing in Printz's other vehicle, a vehicle that had been taken in for repairs right after Settle's disappearance. The repair shop verified that among the repairs was a request to replace that cargo compartment panel, matching the one that was found in the woods. The trash bag also found at the scene included some personal items possibly belonging to Settles, such as jewelry, a bracelet, and a pair of shoes. The items were sent off for testing to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division's Forensic Services Laboratory, and the yogurt container came back showing signs that drugs had been mixed with the yogurt. Those traces of drugs included cyclobenzaprine, tramadol, and lorazepam, matching the same pill bottles of Nancy Rigo that were found in Printz's home. Realizing that a piece of linchpin evidence had been found, law enforcement brought in a cadaver dog to search the property on October 10th. While the dog could not find Settle's body at the site, it did alert officers that it detected the scent of human remains at the same location where the panel, trash bag, and tarp had been found. The body had not been located, but officers moved with a certainty that they had evidence of Settle's murder. Sitting in jail, Printz so far held fast to his story through 2 interviews. He had admitted to knowing Settles and having come to Traveler's Rest to visit her a number of times. Before, he first maintained that on the day of her disappearance, he had met up with her, driven back with her to her home to discuss some matters about a private investigator that had been hired to look into her daughter's upcoming divorce. He then returned to the Best Western parking lot alone in her Jeep to retrieve his own vehicle and go home. He explained that he wiped down the vehicle to keep himself out of the private investigator's efforts. He stood pat on this explanation, thinking no connections had been found that would upend his story. Now, however, armed with new evidence, law enforcement agents began a 3rd custodial interview with the man. It became quickly evident that Printz knew he was caught, and he moved quickly to control the narrative and as much of the outcome as he could.
There are things that have to happen, and there are things that are going to happen. And I'm a realist, and I have acceptance with this. I would like a little bit of control in how they happen. If you tell them to turn that off, I will talk to you a little more freely.
Almost an hour, Printz confessed to law enforcement, stating that he needed to fully disclose his sins. He said that he knew he was looking at life imprisonment at best, and he quickly made a deal to ensure that he would not see the death penalty handed down to him. As part of the deal, he wanted to inform them of things that were not on law enforcement's radar, and that he would come clean when his attorney was present. Most importantly, he told the officers where they could find Settle's body. In May of 2022, Printz led law enforcement officers to a piece of ground on a nearby property where they found her body buried but still identifiable. Still in the custodial interview, he went on to explain that he had been involved in the deaths of Dolores Sellers, Nancy Rigo, and Lee Goodman. He had confessed to multiple murders. A serial killer had been uncovered. In the matter of the deaths of Dolores Sellers and Nancy Rigo, he claimed that he had hypothetically assisted euthanizing the elderly Sellers, hinting that Rigo had been a part of the process. He intimated that Rigo later was bothered greatly by what had happened and had threatened to tell the police. Rigo then became his next victim. He disposed of her body, did not tell anyone, and used the power of attorney that she had given him to have her Social Security checks routed to his residence. Sellers' death, originally attributed to natural causes, was reinvestigated and then declared a homicide. The 3rd victim, Lee Goodman, was originally from Florida and had disappeared in the time between the deaths of Rigo and Settles. Printz claimed that Goodman had attempted to rob him, but that it did not work out well, and her body was disposed of in a rural area after he had cleaned up the incident. No evidence of a robbery was ever found. Printz avoided trial and was sentenced to life imprisonment.
We certainly want to thank y'all for joining us today as we announce an arrest and subsequent plea deal has been reached in connection with the disappearance and death of Edna Settles. She went missing from Greenville County on August the 27th of 2021. This investigation uncovered the man responsible, a man who has now been identified as a serial killer residing in Boston, North Carolina, 59-year-old Daniel Glenn Printz.
He is serving his term with no chance at parole at the United States Penitentiary Hazleton, located in Bruce Mills, West Virginia, a maximum security prison. It is known by its inmates as Misery Mountain, an apt destination for such a man. While Daniel Printz will continue to live out his remaining days, His actions devastated families and communities. Our hearts go out to the victims of the crime, knowing that each of them left behind loving families and friends who, up until now, had no answers as to what had happened to their loved ones. Still, there is a question. Did Daniel Printz confess to all of his sins or just a handful of them? Could there be other victims left behind in places he lived before he got to Bostick, North Carolina, and was eventually caught? Until he decides to say otherwise, we have to live with the hope that his trail of terror began and ended with these 4 unfortunate women.
This case is really strange. A heartless person stabbed someone more than 100 times and left their body in the woods. When they got back home, they acted like nothing happened. Why did they do this, and why did their mom get involved? Before we begin, we want to express our thoughts and prayers for the family affected by the disturbed actions of this specific 14-year-old boy. Welcome to Jacksonville, Florida, the biggest city in the Sunshine State. Let's meet Tristan Bailey, a 13-year-old who was a devoted friend, a talented athlete, and a fan of Starbucks. Tristan attended Patriot Oaks Academy in St. John's, Florida, alongside other gifted teens. She was a committed cheerleader and enjoyed it so much that she chose to continue cheering throughout high school and college. Everything changed one morning when the little girl was found missing by her parents.
This is the photo the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office wants you to take a close look at. Tristan Bailey is missing. Deputies say she was last seen during the overnight hours at the Amenities Center in the Durbin Crossing subdivision. But the search is now expanding to a nearby park, and that is where Brianna Ray Turner joins us live with the latest. Brianna?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm here at Veterans Park in St. Johns County. Now, I just want to go quickly over here because the search group, they're volunteering. These are community members from the Durbin community. Now, take a look if you could zoom in a little bit more, DJ. They're about to start their search right now. They're trying to find Tristan Bailey, 13-year-old girl who was reported missing by her family this morning at 1 a.m. at the Durbin Amenity Center. Now, again, so many families out here. I talked with one family who says their kids went to school with Bailey, and they still can't believe something like this happened. They've been living here for about 12 years now, and they said never has a child been missing. The St. Johns County Sheriff's Office says Bailey was last wearing a white cheerleading skirt and a dark-colored shirt. So if you have any information about the current whereabouts or have seen Bailey, please contact your nearest local law enforcement agency.
On May 9th, Sunday morning, Mother's Day, her mom and dad were already up making breakfast. Everything was going well, and they had no reason to suspect that something happened to their Tristan. Mrs. Bailey went to wake up her daughter around 10 a.m., but to her surprise, she wasn't in her room. The parents went on high alert, and the mum reported the missing daughter to the police. The community that they lived in had no history when it came to crimes. They lived in Durbin Crossing, an exceptional community that is reminiscent of days gone by when kids played outside and laughter echoed through the streets. This is known as a neighborhood that doesn't see a lot of police activity or crime. Definitely no kidnapping or murder. Being very tight-knit, everyone knew each other and acted like they were friends. Judging from all the images, all the people look like they're part of an upper middle class and are well-mannered. So, her mom reports her daughter missing, and the whole community joins in. Investigators later mentioned how impressed they were by the neighborhood's support. People were creating flyers and doing everything they could to help find the girl. Finally, on one security camera, Tristan Bailey was seen walking in the street around 1:15 a.m. She must have snuck out of the house because that would be too late an hour for her parents to let her go outside. She was walking through the parking lot of an amenity center that they had in the area with one of her friends, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci. Different security cameras showed them walking through the neighborhood and into a wooded area of town. A classmate of Tristan and Fucci, whose name isn't mentioned, probably because they are a minor, told St. John's investigators that the pair had been hanging out at his house and left together around 1 a.m. It seemed the two wanted a little bit of walking in the moonlight. Nothing happened for some time, or at least the security cameras didn't catch anything. But 3 hours later, investigators saw Aiden walking out of the wooded area, but this time he was alone, no sign of Tristan. After seeing the footage, police went directly to Aiden's house, and they took him to the station for questioning. Right after asking him to show them the route that he and Tristan took while in the police car, he took out his phone, took multiple pictures of himself, and added the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?"
We're having fun in a f***ing cop car.
Yep. Tristan.
What's up, guys? Tristan, if you f***ing walk out the damn...
When you see this...
Fucci's cousin reported that he was usually at her house multiple times a week. The female minor told investigators the last time she had seen her cousin was Thursday, May the 1st, but said that she had spoken to Fucci after he sent the photo of himself from the back seat of the patrol car. The photo was quickly shared among all their classmates. When asked if she had ever witnessed any odd behavior from Fucci, detectives say his young cousin stated that Fucci once told her that he might go to jail sometime in his life, but then he suddenly had a change of attitude. While still in the car, reports state that Fucci at one point began crying and punched the back of the seat, saying, "I'm going to get arrested for this bullshit." It seemed that he wanted to appear innocent, but when the police searched his bedroom, they found pieces of clothing with the girl's blood on them. Apart from that, they also found different satanic drawings in his room, disturbing images of girls with X's on their genitals and their limbs being cut off. A truly horrific sight. When asked why it took him so long to get home, Fucci told detectives that he walked around alone for a while, telling deputies that he kept walking until he got home between 3 and 3:30 a.m. He said he needed to clear his head. After a 16-hour search, her body was found.
Johns County ends in tragedy. Police believe they have found the body of Tristan Bailey Sunday evening after she was reported missing that morning.
Our Renata DiGregorio live now at Bailey's school. Renata.
Lou, Keitha, we are at Patriot Oaks Academy, and this is where there will be extra grief counselors at the school today because this is where Tristan Bailey went to school. Now, the sheriff's department says her body was found in the immediate area of Veterans Park. That's where they called the press conference just yesterday. A volunteer search group had just gathered at the Durbin Crossing North Amenity Center, which is where Bailey was last seen on midnight Saturday. But before they began their search, the police called that press conference at the Veterans Park. The Amenity Center posted on Twitter that it will be closed until further notice. The sheriff's department says they are still investigating, and one of Bailey's close friends and cheer teammates says she talked with Bailey on Snapchat around 10 p.m. Saturday, and that was just hours before she was last seen.
It makes me really sad that the last time I saw her was at cheer.
And again, there will be grief counselors at Bailey School here at Patriot Oaks Academy. A lot of people reaching out online, even finding Bailey on TikTok, Instagram, and on social media, and saying that they really hope that justice is served. Of course, another...
One of the neighbors who was out jogging decided to take a different route that day. As he was doing his workout, he saw the girl's body. It was in a bushy area near the cul-de-sac of Saddlestone Drive next to the lake.
He called the police immediately at the site of the horrific image. Police arrived in no time, and upon investigating, saw that the girl had been stabbed numerous times. Police took the body in and called the parents to identify and to see if it was their daughter. Unfortunately it was. She was fully dressed, so there was no suspicion of rape or anything like that. So how did the girl's body end up in that area with multiple stab wounds? Who would do that to a 13-year-old girl? The community quickly finds out what happened to her, and of course, they get involved. They started looking at personal security footage, trying to find out who the killer was, and working hand in hand with the police. Because her body was found near the lake, authorities spent days searching the body of water. They didn't say exactly what they were searching for, but it was assumed that they were looking for the murder weapon. Aiden, being the primary suspect, was then sent to juvenile detention in St. John. His first court hearing was via Zoom, and footage of it had been released online. The judge said there was probable cause to keep the boy in detention, and also added that he would remain there until the end of May when they would be able to get the case going. After the boy's detainment, one of the investigators that had worked in the area specifically for over a decade said that he feels very confident about the case. He also added that it would be prosecuted to the fullest. This meant that they were convinced that they had the right suspect, and that he did the horrible act of stabbing Tristan multiple times and taking her life. There was no doubt about it in the minds of the investigators. News of her death broke the boundaries of the community and spread nationwide. People were taking to social media to express their regret, but also their disgust toward Aiden. They used platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter to voice their own personal opinions. Of course, there were others who decided to take Aiden's side, saying that she deserved it and that the police should free him. How could someone root for the murderer? It just doesn't make sense to us. Others wrote different captions along the lines of, "This is what I gotta do to get famous," meaning they needed to kill someone to be known throughout the country. They were associating this horrible act with a way to become viral. Besides that, others were trying to say that more people were involved, like his friends, and that Tristan had been assaulted prior to murder. So many false rumors were going around the internet that police had to release an official statement to separate fact from fiction. Investigators then tried to figure out the motive, if he really did it. Of course, the kids went to a very good school. It was in the top 5% across the United States. They came from very good families and had presumably an exceptional education. So what led to the horrific murder? Well, Aiden didn't actually grow up there. He moved with his mom just 6 months prior to the murder. So you can say that even though he was enrolled in the same school and lived in the same neighborhood as the others, he didn't necessarily have the same morals and values. According to the interview of one police officer, his opinion was that the 14-year-old kid was nothing more and nothing less than a cold-blooded killer. But momentarily, Aiden was innocent until proven guilty. Later in the investigation, the boy, despite still being a minor, was taken out of juvenile detention and arrested as an adult pending his trial. When asked by reporters if Aiden would share detention space with the adults, one officer said that he will not momentarily. Even though he will be trialed as an adult, he will be kept separate from other inmates. But, as you'll see later, that wasn't the case for long. His charges consisted of first-degree murder, a sign that the entire trial will be treated with the utmost seriousness. At that moment, it had been speculated that if he were to be found guilty, he would face life in prison with no possibility of parole. Of course, many people thought that that was inhumane, even though what he did to that 13-year-old girl was unforgivable. You may be wondering, why did they decide to go so hard on him? Remember when we mentioned that little Tristan was stabbed multiple times? Well, it came out that that number was incredibly high. Tristan Bailey was stabbed 114 times. The killer was showing no mercy or remorse. Those were 113 opportunities to realize that what he was doing was wrong and stop immediately. The number of wounds distinctly indicates a clear purpose to kill. Upon searching the lake, divers eventually found the murder weapon. It was a typical folding button knife, and they were convinced that Aiden used it to stab his friend because part of the blade was actually missing, and then later found lodged in the girl's skull in one of the stab wounds. Police think the only reason he stopped at 114 was that the knife broke. He may have caused more damage if the blade had remained intact. 49 of those stab wounds were concluded to be defensive, meaning that it happened in the hands, arms, and legs, indicating that Tristan fought for her life until her last breath. She didn't give up easily. She made his job as hard as she could. But in the end, it didn't matter. At this point, they had an overwhelming amount of evidence against Aiden, and they were very confident that the boy did it, even though he still hadn't admitted he was the author of the crime. Other pieces of evidence were the statements from some of his friends. Police went around interviewing people, and according to them, Aiden was telling his closest friends and his girlfriend for some time now that he wanted to kill somebody. It seemed that he had an urge inside of him, an urge to end an innocent life without any reason at all. He allegedly also added that he would do it in 30 days and that he would drag his victim into the woods and stab him or her. These words came out of his mouth exactly a month before he took Tristan's life, so he kept his promise. His girlfriend's friend also said that she never liked the boy, stating he was numb and emotionless, typical traits of a serial killer according to the state attorney. There was no doubt in his mind that this is a case of first-degree premeditated murder. Aiden wanted to do it and planned it for some time, but he didn't have a victim in mind. Tristan was unlucky to be there at that moment. The victim's family talked to the media multiple times. They poured their hearts out about what happened to their daughter, and they wanted other little girls to hear about Tristan's story so they could be safe. Also, they aimed for other parents to understand that teens can also be dangerous, and that they should keep an eye on their kids, especially if they're expressing strange behavioral traits. Even though there was a large amount of people who stood by them and sent flowers to their home and to Tristan's grave, Others were sending them death threats. It is safe to say that because a majority of the people talking about the murder was comprised out of teenagers, some of them were the ones who threatened the family. Maybe because they didn't understand the gravity of the situation, or maybe because they thought it was funny. Police stepped up and publicly said that these threats will bring with them legal consequences. They did this in order to protect the already heartbroken family. Things took a weird turn. It seems that the mother of Aiden was arrested during the investigation on a felony charge of tampering with the evidence. She allegedly, after seeing her son was arrested, went into his room before the police started digging around and took his jeans that he wore on the night of the murder and washed them in the sink to remove the blood off of them. How did the police find out that she had washed the pair of jeans? Well, inside their house, his mom had set up security cameras, and when the authorities took the clothes, they also confiscated the recorded footage, seeing the woman committing the felony. Inside the house, during the washing of the piece of clothing, there was another person who told Aiden's mom not to do that because she would get in trouble. But the woman didn't listen and proceeded to wash out the bloodstains. She looked stressed and ran around the house while still looking out the window, remembering that this had happened before the body was found, and supposedly she had no reason to be worried. They didn't know that Tristan was dead yet. She didn't spend much time in jail, being released shortly after arrest. Later information about one of his interviews at the sheriff's station had been released to the public. Aiden was there with his parents. After questioning, the officer left the room. The family remained there, just the three of them, and not knowing they were still being recorded, the two adults told Aiden that he needs to stick to his story. This might mean that they knew all along ever since it all happened, but they decided to keep quiet. This is just our speculation. His story was that they had walked toward the woods. Fucci admitted that Tristan did not turn onto her street. They had continued walking together towards the North Durban Parkway. When the two passed Leith Hall Drive, Fucci told investigators that Tristan grabbed his penis, which made him pissed, and an argument ensued. That's when he told authorities that he had pushed her hard to the ground, where she hit her head, and left her there according to the report. Another thing that happened during the interview was that Aiden was asked if he was wearing jeans that night. He responded with a positive answer, but immediately his mom intervened, saying that he was wrong, that he was wearing khakis, trying to protect her son by lying about a detail that would prove crucial in his trial. But that couldn't have been the case. The body was found lying on her right side. Her cell phone, $20, and a cotton candy vape were found next to her. All of the items were covered in blood. Also, some writings were found on her ankles. On her left one was scribbled karma, and on the right one was a smiley face drawn with a pen. Now, if Aiden had left her there and someone else had come along and killed her, wouldn't they have taken the belongings? After that, it seemed that no one took Aiden seriously about his claims and that the murder was partially his parents' fault. His girlfriend also said that he carried around knives with him and nicknamed the weapons Picker and Poker. When asked what the knives looked like, she allegedly described one of them as looking exactly like the one they found in the lake. Eventually, Aiden ended up sharing detention space with adults. The prosecution released a statement saying that they had a surprise witness for the trial from within the county jail. The identity of this inmate was not known, but it was presumed that he found out further information about the murder after Aiden, maybe, had said something to him or to other inmates. The prosecutors stated that they have 250 witnesses against Aiden. Whether he's innocent or guilty, he made quite an impression on such a large number of people that the authorities will bring to the stand in favor of the Bailey family. Before his routine pretrial hearing, 14-year-old accused killer Aiden Fucci appeared on a video feed from the Duval County Jail, wearing an orange jumpsuit and a confused expression. He was led handcuffed into a room with a phone so that he could hear the court proceedings. He appeared frightened and looked around the room with a confused, dazed expression. He was acting like he didn't know where he was.
What's going on? I don't want you demons. I don't want you demons take my soul. You demons will take my soul away. I don't let you demons steal my soul. I don't know what's going on. What I see you first. What's going on? But I used to. I'm not that, but why are all these change?
A guard came into the room and took the phone receiver off the wall and handed it to Fucci, who flipped back his long hair and continued to look disoriented as he held the receiver to his ear. Did the time he had spent in jail get to him? He then started rocking back and forth in his seat, looking around the room in confusion and muttering. At one point, he can be heard talking about demons, saying that demons will take his soul, and he was sure that they will. But it didn't stop there. He then asks, "What's going on?" before saying in a plaintive tone, "Why am I here? I just want to talk to my mom and dad. What's going on? What's going on?" Aiden Fucci's feed eventually ended, and his lawyer filed a speedy trial waiver, which most defendants do, and the case was passed on to October 28th. A forensic psychologist not affiliated with the case said that after watching the video of Fucci's behavior in the courtroom feed, he wouldn't be surprised if the teen receives a mental competency evaluation. The doctor said that Fucci looks disoriented and confused, and that it's hard to tell if he's faking mental illness or if he's really suffering from a mental disorder. From his perspective, it seemed genuine given the pattern of behavior he displayed and from what else we know. Diorenzio said that Fucci's previous patterns of behavior will likely play a part in the case. Attorney Gene Nichols, who is also not affiliated with the case, said that it would not be unusual to see a competency evaluation in a case like Fucci's, but that it could drag out the case. Young people often get evaluated before trial, and sometimes it can take months until a verdict is reached. At this time, the judge has not ordered Fucci to have his mental competency evaluation, and investigators have also not said if he suffers from a mental disorder. A separate hearing was scheduled for Crystal Smith, Fucci's mother. It was also passed until October 28th. She is still under investigation for tampering with evidence. On the 28th of October, another modification happened. Aiden Fucci waived his appearance in court. Fucci made quick appearances before his new pretrial date was set for February 2nd.
The video we're about to watch contains footage from a police officer's body camera. It's intense and unsettling, especially for those involved. What's captured here is the climax of a bizarre series of events that even now seem hard to comprehend. This all unfolded in Fulton County, Georgia, when the Sandy Springs Police Department responded to a call about an intruder in a home on Cameron Ridge Drive. As they arrived, they learned that the suspect was still inside, upstairs.
Hey, sir, did you call? Hey, so is there someone actively in your house right now? Where's he at? Hey, puppy. You know this guy? Okay. Okay, has he got any...
Hey, it's the police department. Come on down. What's your name? Hello? Your house is next door. It's not this one. It is. It's next door, man. This is the residence of... What's that? No, man. Not if you come out right now and talk to us. No, we're not going to twist anything like that, you know.
The officers tried to communicate with the intruder, urging him to come down. They even reassured him that they wouldn't harm him. After several minutes of negotiation, things took a violent turn. The man, later identified as 22-year-old Matthew Scott Lands, attacked one of the officers with a hunting knife, inflicting serious wounds. Despite the severity of the injuries, the officer managed to survive, narrowly escaping death. Lands himself was eventually subdued by the officers, but the incident raises questions about his mental state and motives. Had the officers known more about him beforehand, their approach might have been different. It's a chilling reminder of the dangers faced by law enforcement officers and the unpredictability of such situations. Before we dive in, we want to extend our condolences to the families of all those affected by the terrible events discussed in this case. Just
2 days prior to Matthew Lance's attack on the police officer, a heartbreaking incident unfolded at a residence on Verbena Drive in Ackworth, Cobb County. This aerial footage shows the red brick house on Verbena Drive where the bodies of a couple were found. You'll also see police officers in the garden of a large weatherboard house behind the Verbena Drive dwelling. This house belongs to Teresa and Scott Lanz and their 4 children, including Matthew Lanz. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. In the summer of 2019, Philip Brent and Eliza Wells, both 23 years old, had just moved into their new home on Verbena Drive in Ackworth. Ackworth, an affluent neighborhood with green lawns and spacious houses, lies in Cobb County, Georgia, along the shores of 2 lakes and the Etowah River, nestled in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains. It seemed like an ideal place for Philip and Eliza to start their life together. However, their happiness was short-lived. Shortly after settling in, they began receiving disturbing hand-delivered letters in their mailbox. These letters contained explicit pornographic images, folded into computer paper with nonsensical messages written in marker. Initially dismissing them as pranks by local kids, the couple soon realized the severity of the situation as the letters continued to arrive. One letter even featured a woman wearing a tiara, accompanied by a plastic toy tiara, which deeply unsettled them. Little did they know this was just the beginning of a twisted campaign that would ultimately turn their new home into a scene of tragedy and horror. With no way to trace the letters, the police advised the couple to install home surveillance cameras. In the middle of 2020, Philip made a startling discovery. He found a juice bottle with a cigarette in it, placed against his garage door. Reviewing his security footage, he spotted a man walking up their driveway late at night and leaving the bottle there. Philip immediately recognized him as Austin Lanz, a 27-year-old who lived on the property behind theirs. Although they had never formally met or spoken, Philip and Eliza often saw Austin sitting on his porch smoking as they passed by his family's large white house on Delphinium Boulevard. Austin worked for his father's construction company, but his dreams of becoming a Marine were dashed in 2012 due to high blood pressure. The couple's suspicions were confirmed when they learned that Austin was their tormentor. "We already had a feeling it was him," Philip said. "Every time we passed by his house, he would give us creepy looks and wave." Police issued a warning to Austin, and his parents arranged a meeting with Philip and Eliza, expressing their deep concern and apologizing for their son's actions. They promised to get him therapy. During the meeting, Austin chillingly admitted that he could see Eliza through their bathroom window, which faced the Lanz home. He had been watching her, and now he wanted her to know. Understandably, Philip and Eliza were shaken. It was clear that this wasn't a typical neighborly dispute over property lines. They were dealing with something much more sinister and irrational. From that moment on, they never opened the blinds on that side of the house again. Austin appeared to have a tenuous grasp on reality, and unfortunately, Philip and Eliza found themselves at the center of his disturbing behavior. Despite their efforts to seek legal protection by applying for a restraining order from the Cobb County Magistrate Court, they were informed that there wasn't enough evidence to justify one. By October 2020, Eliza had decided to leave the house, and the couple went their separate ways, likely for reasons beyond just dealing with a neighborly stalker. Nevertheless, this situation undoubtedly added strain to their relationship. Meanwhile, the bizarre occurrences continued. On April 18th at around midnight, Philip received an alert from his alarm company indicating that someone was in his house. Checking the surveillance footage on his phone, he saw Austin at his front door, taping a large cardboard sign with a cryptic message, "I'm done wondering for real." It was a perplexing act that left Philip feeling uneasy. This time, the police issued Austin with a trespass warning. However, Philip was so unsettled by the incident that he decided to leave the house and stay with his sister. Little did he know, This decision would later prove to be life-saving. On April 24th, around 4 a.m., Philip was once again startled awake by an alert from his home surveillance system. This time, what he saw on the video feed left him shaken to his core. Austin, wearing a mask, had forcefully smashed through the back door with a sledgehammer, armed with a crowbar and a gun. Over the next 13 minutes, he prowled through the house, turning on lights in every room. In Philip's bedroom, he tore off the bed sheets, indicating he was searching for something specific, or more likely, someone. Police swiftly arrested Austin that night on charges of burglary and trespassing. Despite the evidence, he denied taking anything, revealing a glimpse into the madness of his mind. Austin claimed that planes constantly flew over his neighborhood, and he believed his phone was being tracked. However, his behavior took a violent turn when he attacked 2 Cobb County Sheriff's deputies, seriously injuring them. During the altercation, he challenged the deputies to uncuff him so he could fight them one-on-one, demonstrating his unstable mental state. Despite his obvious psychological issues, Austin was released from jail on July 18, 2021, after posting a 30,000 bail. He was ordered to undergo a mental health and substance abuse evaluation within 30 days of his release. Sadly, Austin's story would come to a tragic end long before he could receive the help he needed. On August 3, 2021, Austin arrived in the D.C. area and boarded a bus headed to the Pentagon. Nearby, journalist David Satter heard gunshots coming from the metro bus stop and began filming. The scene revealed a body surrounded by police officers at the Pentagon Transit Center. The victim was identified as senior Pentagon police officer George Gonzalez, a decorated war veteran. Without provocation, Austin approached Gonzalez, stabbing him in the neck before taking the officer's gun and fatally shooting him. He then turned the gun on himself, ending his own life. The Pentagon was placed on lockdown for nearly 2 hours following the incident. A subsequent report on the attack attributed Austin's motive to likely stem from mental health challenges and a desire for revenge against the U.S. military, who had thwarted his aspirations to join the Marines. Additionally, he harbored animosity towards U.S. authorities in general.
More about the man accused of attacking 2 Cobb County deputies earlier this year and then just yesterday fatally stabbing a Pentagon officer. Joe Hankey spent the day digging through warrants to help us understand more about Austin Lanz's past and the moments leading up to the attack at the Pentagon Transit Center. And Joe, you also spoke to one of his neighbors, right?
Well, that's right, Sheba. One of his next-door neighbors says his family has lived in the same home in Ackworth for nearly 3 decades. It's where 27-year-old Austin Lanz grew up and continued to live with his parents, according to this neighbor. She said she knew about the attack at the Pentagon officer yesterday, but she didn't know Lanz was the suspect until we talked. Information released this afternoon by the FBI in Washington details Austin Lanz stepping off a bus at the Pentagon Tuesday, and then without being provoked, he immediately attacked Pentagon police officer George Gonzalez with a knife. According to the FBI, after killing Gonzalez, Lanz took the officer's gun, shot himself, and then died when other officers, quote, engaged him. Gonzalez is described as a Brooklyn, New York native, a diehard Yankees fan, and an Army vet who served in Iraq.
I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. I've been in this neighborhood for 32 years.
Valerie Simpson says the Lanz family moved into her Ackworth neighborhood shortly after her and raised their family, including Austin Lanz, who had an extremely short military career when he was a teen. In a statement, a Marine Corps major tells 11 Alive, "We can confirm Austin W. Lanz enlisted in the Marine Corps on October 9th, 2012, but was administratively separated on November 2nd, 2012, and never earned the title Marine." Simpson says earlier this year, Cobb County Police came to the Lanz house.
I did see the cop cars out here, and they were talking to the family.
That was April 24th, with police in an arrest warrant accusing Lanz of breaking into another neighbor's home and leaving, quote, inappropriate pictures and messages in the mailbox. When he was arrested for criminal trespassing and burglary, Lanz claimed police had been flying planes over the neighborhood and tracking his phone. Later that day, after he was booked into the Cobb County Jail, Lenz is accused in a second warrant of attacking two deputies, dislocating one's thumb and leaving the other with a torn ACL and chipped knee bone, while destroying one of their tasers and making verbal threats against deputies. 2 days later, a judge granted Lenz a $45,000 bond. In May, a judge reduced his bond to $30,000 and ordered Lenz to have a drug, alcohol, and mental health evaluation completed within 30 days of leaving jail. Lenz was released from jail on July 18th, meaning that deadline had not yet passed. The Lenz family was not home today when we knocked on their door, but an attorney for the family says they may soon release a statement. The motive for the attack outside the Pentagon, still unknown, and the FBI is still investigating. Flags outside the Pentagon are being flown at half-staff in honor of Officer George Gonzalez.
It appears that any desire for revenge against the military had evolved into a state of psychosis, marked by feelings of persecution. The Lenz family expressed sincere condolences to the Gonzalez family, acknowledging Austin's struggle with mental health challenges and his attempts to seek help, which unfortunately were unsuccessful. However, the tragedy didn't end there. On the morning of November 18, 2021, police responded to a welfare check at a red brick house on Verbena Drive in Ackworth. They discovered a horrifying scene. A young woman seated on the couch with gunshot wounds to her leg, wrists and face, and a man lying on the floor beside her, shot in the head, shoulder and torso. This was the same house that had been targeted with disturbing letters and a previous home invasion. However, the victims weren't the couple who had endured months of harassment. Earlier that year, the house had been put up for sale, suggesting that the stalking ordeal had tarnished the appeal of the Ackworth neighborhood for Philip Brent. On August 31, 2021, Justin Thomas Hicks and his wife, Amber Hicks, both 31 years old, purchased the house. They moved in with their 2-year-old son, Jacob. The Hicks were childhood sweethearts who grew up near each other. Justin was a veteran firefighter with the Cherokee County Fire and Emergency Services, having recently completed his paramedic training. Amber worked as an audiology assistant at a hearing aid center, having studied sports medicine. This was their first home together, and Amber expressed gratitude on social media for finding their dream home. On September 17, 2021, Amber praised their real estate agent Kristen Harden for her dedication in helping them secure their dream home. However, tragedy struck on November 7, 2021, when Amber made her final social media post about a picture from their honeymoon with her husband, Justin Hicks. On the evening of November 17, 2021, 22-year-old Matthew Lenz left his apartment in Athens, where he was a student at the University of Georgia, and drove to Ackworth. He carried a tactical backpack containing a gun, a knife, ammunition, and a flashlight designed to break glass. By 9 p.m., he arrived at the red brick house behind his parents' home in Ackworth. With 2-year-old Jacob asleep in his crib, Lenz entered the house and fatally shot Justin and Amber Hicks before returning to his apartment in Athens. The following day, when Jacob didn't show up at preschool, Amber's mother requested a welfare check. Police found the bodies of Justin and Amber, with Jacob unharmed in his crib, having gone hours without food or water. The senseless tragedy left everyone bewildered, including the police and neighbors. The man who had terrorized the former residents was dead, leaving many to question whether this was merely a chilling coincidence. As homicide detectives delved into the investigation of the double homicide in Ackworth, officers at the Sandy Springs Police Department were grappling with the stabbing assault of a police officer by Matthew Lenz. It soon dawned on them that he was the brother of the killer, Austin Lenz, and a neighbor to the young couple who had tragically lost their lives in their home. Once again, suspicion turned toward the Lenz family. Could they possibly have not one, but 2 sons capable of such heinous acts? The surveillance footage from the Hicks home revealed Matthew Lenz crossing the backyard on the night of the murders, wearing a grey hoodie. Police later found the same hoodie in his washing machine during a search of his apartment. Additionally, they discovered ammunition, shell casings, and ultimately the gun used in the murders at his parents' home. In February 2022, a Cobb County grand jury indicted Matthew Scott Lenz for the murders of Justin and Amber Hicks, along with a slew of other charges, including second-degree cruelty to children. This charge stemmed from leaving 2-year-old Jacob Hicks alone with his murdered parents. Lenz is currently being held without bail in the Fulton County Jail. However, this marks the end of the factual narrative for now. Cobb County Bureau Chief Chris Jose provided new developments, indicating that the lead investigator revealed fresh evidence during a hearing at the Cobb County Courthouse. This evidence included items found in a car driven by Matthew Lenz, such as a tactical backpack, binoculars, and a large metal flashlight designed to break glass. The investigation continues, and further details are expected to emerge as the legal proceedings unfold. He's the man accused of fatally shooting Justin and Amber Hicks. Amber was discovered still seated on the couch, while Timothy Justin Hicks was found on the floor next to it. Detective Zachary Stanner testified that cell phone data placed Lenz leaving his Athens apartment, where he was a student at UGA, at 8 p.m. on November 17th. Subsequently, the same data showed him at the scene of the crime in Ackworth around 9 p.m. The detective further explained that Lenz's parents and the Hicks were neighbors who shared a backyard fence. According to the detective, Lenz returned to his Athens apartment after the murder. During the search of Lenz's apartment, police discovered a grey North Face hoodie in the washing machine, along with ammunition. Hours before the search, police say Lenz's parents drove to Athens and confronted him about the murders. Despite his denial, they saw the gun allegedly used in the murders. They confirmed retrieving a pistol from his house, but left the magazines and ammunition behind at his apartment. Furthermore, police claim that surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera showed Lenz in the Hicks family's backyard, wearing a grey hoodie. Investigators believe it's the same hoodie found in the washing machine at his Athens apartment. The gun was later found at his parents' home. The Ackworth community, like others, is left with unanswered questions. Speculation runs rampant in the true crime community regarding why the original homeowners were targeted by Austin Lenz. Many believe mental illness was the driving force behind his harassment campaign. It's likely that paranoid ideation gripped Lenz, including delusions that the couple conspired against him. Perhaps Lenz even believed they were part of a government-led conspiracy, leading to his fixation on phone tracking and violent confrontations with police. But what about Matthew? Amber's cousins speculated that it could have been a case of mistaken identity and retribution for his older brother's death. According to this theory, a violent and homicidal Matthew had taken it upon himself to finish what Austin couldn't, mistakenly targeting Amber and Justin instead of Eliza and Philip. However, mental illness often runs in families. If Austin was schizophrenic or suffering from psychosis, it's possible Matthew developed a similar condition. Living together, they might have even shared delusions. Perhaps Matthew adopted his brother's beliefs about the neighboring couple, or came to view the house itself as part of a government operation. Shared delusions, while rare, have been documented before. For instance, Swedish twins Ursula and Sabina Eriksson made headlines in 2008 when they ran into traffic, believing they were being pursued. Of course, all of this is speculative. Feel free to share your own thoughts in the comments below. Brent and Eliza expressed frustration with the criminal justice system, feeling it failed to provide adequate help for Austin. Eliza pondered what could have been done differently to support him mentally, rather than simply releasing him on bail. Tragically, this system failure cost George Gonzalez his life and may have paved the way for the loss of Amber and Justin Hicks. A GoFundMe for the family described them as literal angels on earth who were taken too soon, leaving behind their precious son.
Young love can be an all-consuming experience, and this was certainly the case for 15-year-old Florida teen Seath Jackson, who met and fell in love with Amber Wright during the summer of 2011. For Seath, he felt he had found his dream girl in the doe-eyed, auburn-haired Amber. Tragically for Seath, he couldn't have been more wrong before we start. We would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the loved ones of Seath Jackson, who fell victim to this abominable act.
This case is the single most cold, calculated, premeditated case of murder that I have ever seen.
Welcome to Bellevue, a sleepy town located in the heart of Central Florida, known as the city with small-town charm. Bellevue is surrounded by lush countryside and green pastures, sparkling freshwater springs, and an abundance of wildlife. But for the teenagers who live in this quiet residential community, life can get a little too quiet other than the skate park and a drive-in movie theater in nearby Ocala, Bellevue, and its surrounding towns offer little in the way of entertainment here. Trouble is easy to find, particularly for those who fall in with the wrong crowd. On April 17, 2011, 15-year-old Seath Tyler Jackson was spending his Sunday afternoon how he often did that spring of his sophomore year, hanging out with his friends playing video games. But on this particular Sunday, Seath was agitated. His ex-girlfriend, 15-year-old Amber Wright, kept messaging him. Amber wanted to meet with Seath to talk about rekindling their relationship. She wanted to talk to him alone and suggested meeting at her friend Charlie Ely's trailer. Seath was tempted, but he was also wary. He had just spent weeks embroiled in a bitter and vicious breakup with Amber that had escalated to the point of a physical altercation with Amber's new boyfriend. 18-year-old Michael Bargo, was this some kind of ploy to get revenge? Seath's friends were also equally skeptical in their minds. There was something up with Amber's sudden change of heart. They reminded Seath that Amber was bad news and that he didn't need the drama. Seath messaged Amber saying that he was worried she was setting him up to be jumped. She assured him that he wasn't. And when his phone rang a short time later, friends overheard Amber telling Seath that she loved him and that she wanted him back and implored him to meet with her. Seath relented beneath his angry bravado. Seath still loved Amber and had been heartbroken over her for weeks. A short time later, Seath left his friend's house claiming he was on his way home and headed out for the night. It was the last time any of his friends would see him alive. In late 2010, Seath Jackson was in his sophomore year of high school. The youngest of 3 boys, Seath had grown up enjoying life in rural Florida, climbing trees, skateboarding, and BMXing, much of it with his best friend William Samlot. William and Seath had been friends for as long as they could remember, more like brothers, William said. And Seath was the kind of person who would do anything for you. At 14, life was good for Seath Jackson Tall, for his age. Seath was good-looking, bright, and popular. He had a reputation for being cool, calm, and collected. William and Seath shared many of the same interests, including a love of mixed martial arts and more recently a growing interest in parties and girls. And a lot of girls wanted to date Seath Jackson. After that, in December of 2010, 14-year-old Seath began dating a pretty petite auburn-haired girl named Amber Wright. Amber was confident and popular with a wide circle of friends. The connection between them was instant. Seath, for his part, was infatuated with Amber. All too quickly, the pair became inseparable. Seath's parents, Scott and Sonia, remembered them always being together watching TV or playing basketball in the backyard. In early March 2011, Seath professed his love for Amber on his Facebook page. But while the relationship was intense, it was also volatile. Much of their relationship revolved around drinking and smoking cannabis. The two had trust and jealousy issues and fought hard, and often meanwhile Seath's parents perceived a distinctly manipulative aspect to Amber's character. But it was not enough to set off any serious alarm bells, and certainly not enough to predict in their wildest dreams the evil that Amber would soon prove herself capable of. Amber and Seath's relationship came to an end in the latter part of March 2011 when Amber abruptly dumped Seath. But if their relationship had been toxic and turbulent, it would be nothing compared to their breakup. Seath announced on Facebook that he was single. Within days, the two had begun a vicious back and forth of insults and incendiary name-calling for all their friends to see. Seath had discovered that Amber had cheated on him and posted comments calling her a slut and cheat. In one post, he accused her of using meth. One post attracted 37 comments, with several of Seath's Facebook friends calling him out both on his language and the accusations. As for Amber's post, she claimed that she had never loved Seath. In one, she wrote, "Just do me a favor and consider me dead to you. I never loved you. I don't even want to hear your name." In another, she wrote. "It takes a real man to accept the fact that he got broke up with Seath." Responded, "We both need to just let all of this go. Yeah, we split. Yeah, it hurt, but I'm over it. I'm just not to let Mike have his cake and eat it too." The Mike that Seath was referring to was 18-year-old Michael Shane Bargo. Bargo was the boy Amber had cheated on him with, and Seath had now discovered that Amber and Bargo were dating. It was information that would consume Seath with jealousy and hurt, and escalate the conflict to new heights. Seath had already known Michael Bargo for some time. The two actively disliked each other since his arrival in Florida 2 years earlier. Bargo had gained a reputation for trying to be perceived as a tough guy, an image that Seath wasn't buying. Still, there was no doubt that Bargo was troubled. He had grown up in a home filled with violence and conflict, according to his mother. Bargo's father was an alcoholic with an explosive temper, and as he grew older, Bargo himself would often explode in extreme fits of rage after Bargo moved to Florida at 16 to live with his father. He dropped out of school and moved out of his father's home, drifting from house to house, staying with friends. Twice he had been arrested for burglary. He had an active restraining order against him and was known for carrying a .22 caliber revolver everywhere he went. Later, Amber would claim that she only dated Bargo to goad and hurt Seath if that was her goal. She succeeded. Seath was devastated by the loss of Amber. Bargo now became the crux of Seath's issue with Amber, and the target of his anger Seath took to openly taunting and threatening Bargo on Facebook. He repeatedly challenged him to a fight. Some of Seath's friends weighed in on the feud, enthusiastically calling Bargo soft, and implying that he would soon get beaten up by Seath if Bargo would come out and fight like a man. Meanwhile, Amber had told Bargo that Seath had been physically abusive to her throughout their relationship. Adding fuel to the fire as the feud gained momentum, Bargo ranted to friends about his hatred for Seath. The feud then spread to Amber's half-brother, Kyle Hooper. 16-year-old Kyle was dating a girl named Alyssa in the midst of the Seath feud with Bargo. Alyssa broke up with Kyle over the phone, and when Kyle turned up at her house to talk to her, he found her in bed with Seath. Both sides now traded threats of physical violence. Seath threatened to burn Amber's house down. What had been an online battle quickly spilled into the real world after finding out that Amber and Bargo were going to a local party. Seath turned up and confronted him. A heated exchange took place before Seath laid the older boy out in front of a crowd of peers. The humiliation of being beaten by the younger Seath would prove to be too bitter a pill for Bargo to swallow, and what Seath could not have possibly known then was that Bargo was no ordinary love rival. Bargo was someone with a deeply disturbed mind, a man with no moral compass and no sense of compassion, and certainly no limits when it came to the suffering he was willing to inflict on a person in the name of restoring his pride. If there was such a thing as the wrong crowd in the Bellevue area, it was the teams who hung around 18-year-old Charlie K. Ely's trailer in rural Summerfield. Charlie's trailer was a popular hangout spot for teens looking for somewhere to party away from the rules and restrictions of home, and with her husband in jail and rent to cover, Charlie had let out rooms to Justin Soto, age 20, Kyle Hooper, age 16, and Michael Bargo. Kyle Hooper had left home after fighting with his current stepfather over drug use. Justin Soto had juvenile arrests for possession of a weapon on school property battery and burglary. Bargo, meanwhile, was the self-appointed ringleader of the posse that hung out at Charlie's on the afternoon of April 17th. Bargo shared with his group his plans to kill Seath Jackson. There that day were Justin Soto, Kyle Hooper, Amber Wright, Charlie Ely, and 37-year-old James Young Havens III. The former stepfather to Amber and Kyle and a regular visitor at Charlie's, according to Kyle Bargo, said, "We need to kill Seath Jackson. Nobody likes him. We need to kill him." Bargo had already thought through exactly how to do it, and the role that each of them would play. Bargo's idea was to lure Seath to the trailer through Amber, who would invite Seath over under the pretense of wanting to rekindle their relationship once Seath was in the house. Justin Soto would hit Seath with an axe handle or piece of wood before Bargo and Hooper would move in and shoot and beat him. Bargo would then take him to the bathtub to finish the job. He was emphatic that Seath should still be alive at that moment he killed him. He wanted to look into Seath's face before he pulled the trigger so Seath would know exactly who it was that was ending his life. Most teenagers would have recoiled at Bargo's proposal. The plot was abominable, inconceivable, no matter what real or imagined crime Seath had committed, but not with this group. Within minutes of hearing Bargo's plan, all five were on board, and in the same way a group of teenagers might plan a party, they began to hash out the finer details of their twisted plot. Mid-discussion, James left to go home later, claiming he felt uncomfortable, not so uncomfortable, of course, that he would try to deter the teenagers from acting on their deranged plan, or even to inform the police just enough to not hear anymore. And indeed, he would return the next day to help the teenagers dispose of the body shortly after 7 p.m., Amber contacted Seath and told him of her hopes to reconcile and her desire to meet up. She pulled out all the stops to reassure him that he could trust her and that she loved him, knowing full well that with each sentence, she was wooing Seath towards a violent and certain death. Moments before Seath left his friend's house to meet Amber, he sent one last message. It said, "Amber, if you have me jumped, I will never give you the time of day. So if I get jumped, say goodbye, all right?" Seath's gut was telling him that something was wrong, but his concerns centered around getting a beating that Amber and her friends could have been planning his own diabolical slaying was simply beyond the realm of any sane person's imagination. At 7:58 p.m., Amber sent a message telling Seath to meet her at the corner close to Charlie's home when Seath replied that he was almost there. Amber responded enthusiastically, "See you there when they finally met." Seath was surprised to find Charlie with Amber, but Amber reassured him and persuaded him to come back to Charlie's. He agreed once in the house he found Kyle there, but Kyle was friendly, and once again Amber placated him, asking Kyle to leave the room so she could talk to Seath in private with the plan. Now in full swing, Kyle joined Bargo in a back room to prepare for the moment the savage attack would begin. It was at this moment that Kyle had a flicker of conscience faced with the reality of what lay ahead. Kyle expressed his doubts to Bargo, who quickly put them to rest. He reminded Kyle of all the things Seath had done sleeping with Kyle's girlfriend, disrespecting his sister trying to jump them. Seath deserved to die in the living room with Amber. Distracting Seath, Kyle and Soto emerged from their rooms and began beating Seath with pieces of wood. In an instant, Seath was on his feet and running for the door. It was now Bargo's turn. He opened fire, shooting Seath twice in the back. Seath made it out the door and almost to the road before Soto tackled him to the ground, and together with Kyle and Bargo wrestled him back into the house. He was then dragged into the bathroom, bloodied and mortally wounded but still alive, and placed in the bathtub. Bargo now instructed Kyle and Soto to help Amber and Charlie clean the blood splatter from the living room and kitchen while he had his turn dealing with Seath. Kyle later said that he heard Bargo yelling and cussing and beating Seath, and the sound of more gunshots. Bargo then delivered his final shot, this time in the face, killing him instantly. The final atrocity now began, the gruesome disposal of the body. Michael Bargo broke Seath's kneecaps with a baseball bat and hogtied him in order to fit the lifeless body into a sleeping bag. He then pulled out Seath's teeth with pliers. Together, the group dragged the boy's body into Charlie's fire pit, where a fire had been prepared and was already burning fiercely. After placing the body in the pit, the group sat around the pyre like it was a festive bonfire, drinking, laughing, and talking, all the while tending to the burning body of their innocent victim, until it was nothing more than ashes and bone fragments. Neighbors would later recall seeing terrifyingly high flames and the sounds of what they thought were fireworks. But the music and laughter convinced them that a party was being held the next day. James Young Havens stepped in to help the teenagers dispose of the remains. He helped them shovel Seath's remains into 3 5-gallon cans, which were thrown into a nearby flooded lime pit. He then helped them clean up the last of the bloodstains in the house with bleach. Once everything was clean, the group relaxed and played basketball. Seath had always made sure to call his parents if he was going to be late or not coming home at night, when he failed to return home without phoning on the night of April 17th. The young man's mother knew instinctively that something was terribly wrong. Early the next day, she reported the disappearance to the police, and by the day after his disappearance was being broadcast all over the local news. Several miles down the road, Kyle Hooper was watching TV that day with his mother Tracy when the news of Seath's disappearance came on the air. Kyle promptly admitted to having witnessed the murder but denied any involvement. Tracy immediately notified the police later that day as she sat at the local police department. She had not the slightest idea that both of her children had been key players in the murder of Seath Jackson, and that neither would ever be returning home.
Detectives are piecing together the final brutal moments of Seath Jackson's life.
The local teen was beaten, shot, mutilated, burned into ashes, and his remains sunk to the bottom of a local quarry.
West 2's Kendra A-Strike with the late-breaking details tonight from Marion County.
Lead detectives tell West 2 News they believe they know where the murder weapon has been hidden, but right now they are not telling us whether it has been found. Crime scene techs wrapped up scouring the property here for evidence where they say 15-year-old Seath Jackson was viciously murdered.
This is ruthless.
Friends of 15-year-old Seath Jackson continue to visit his memorial. Cars pass by the Summerfield house where the teen met a violent end. Investigators say he was lured to the home by former girlfriend, 9th grader Amber Wright, then attacked, shot, and burned. Detectives say Wright's new boyfriend, Michael Bargo, is the mastermind behind the killing.
Potentially, you are facing the death penalty.
Bargo faced a judge with a gash on his eye and forehead. Investigators tell WESH 2 News he had the cuts when they arrested him. The suspects tell police the victim tried to run from the home after Bargo shot him and was still alive even after the group dragged him into the bathtub and broke his kneecaps to stuff him in a sleeping bag. Friends believe he fought for his life.
Seth was a little fighter. I hope Seth messed them all up.
Right now, Bargo and the teen accused of grabbing the victim as he tried to run, Justin Soto, are on suicide watch at the jail.
Maybe he wants to actually die so he doesn't have to remember anything.
Crime scene techs wrapped up sifting through evidence focused on a bin in the backyard near the fire pit. Even experienced detectives are shaken, as those close to Seth Jackson.
That's hard to believe, isn't it? That you could get 5 people together that would think that was a good idea. It's still unbelievable to me.
Who gave them the right to take somebody's life? Who made them God? Nobody did.
Right now, Wright and her brother remain in juvenile detention. Their stepdad, accused of helping to cover up the crime, has been released on bond. The 4 suspects charged as adults will be back in court May 24th. In Marion County, Kendra Strike, WESH 2 News.
Detective Rhonda led the investigation. Kyle was the first to confess to his role in the murder of Seth Jackson. Kyle admitted to being the first to hit Seth over the head with a wooden stick. He claimed that then he told Seth to run and get out of the house, and said he was shocked when he saw Bargo shoot Seth.
I hit him over the head with a stick. Who'd you hit? Seth. Okay. And he was in the chair, and I got in the kitchen. I said, "No, house." And then all of a sudden I hear, bam, bam, bam. Mike sitting there laying bullets into him. So you saw Mike Bargo shoot Seth? Yes, ma'am. And he grabbed the body, put it into the bathtub, and then he was talking about how he was going to burn it, and then there was a rock quarry over here by Gator Mountain or whatever, and he was going to jump the ashes or whatever into the rock quarry. How many times did Mike shoot him? I don't know. I heard 8.
Nowhere to be found. Amber Charlie and Justin Soto were now called in for questioning in Amber's first version of the night's events. She claimed that Seth had knocked on the door of the trailer and had asked to speak to her. She allowed him in and sat with him on the couch when Kyle suddenly burst in the room and knocked him over the head. She and Charlie panicked and ran to Charlie's bedroom, where they heard the sound of multiple gunshots. They stayed hidden there all night, only emerging the next day to find the house smelling strongly of bleach. Charlie gave a similar version of events during their interrogation. Each suspect was quick to throw Bargo under the bus and denied any premeditation or knowledge of what Bargo had intended for Seth. But the police left Kyle, Charlie, and Amber to chat alone in an interrogation room, unaware that they were being recorded. The 3 spoke openly of their roles in the death of Seth and their concerns about being caught in a matter of minutes. They had sown the seeds of their own demise and a lifetime that would be spent behind bars. Detectives soon tracked down Bargo 80 miles away at a friend's house. Kyle's confession led to the arrest of all 6 suspects within days, including James, who was arrested as an accessory to murder.
I went away. I left. I thought it was a joke because, I don't know what to say because I'm looking at a lot of years right now. I'm scared. I don't have a freedom now. I've lost everything now.
What about the 15-year-old who's dead and was mutilated?
He lost his life too.
Although they were juveniles, each of the suspects were ultimately tried as adults at separate trials. Amber Wright, Charlie Ely, and Kyle Hooper were each found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Justin Soto pled guilty and received a life sentence. James Havens received a 10-year sentence for being an accessory to murder. Michael Bargo initially pled not guilty but was eventually convicted and sentenced to death, becoming the youngest person on Florida's death row.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Michael Shane Bargo Jr., should be sentenced to death. Yes.
Michael Bargo holds his head after hearing he is sentenced to death for the second time on Tuesday. In 2013, 10 out of 12 jurors decided he should be put to death, but since then, a new state law requiring that death penalties be unanimous gave Bargo another chance. Prosecutors say Bargo was the leader in a group's plot to kill 15-year-old Seth Jackson at a Summerfield home.
A 15-year-old child knew he was being dragged back into a house and was going to die.
Bargo and 4 others beat and shot Jackson to death 8 years ago. The group burned his body and disposed of it in paint buckets, which were dumped into a water-filled quarry. The defense argues Bargo suffers from mental illnesses and should be spared.
He was not taking any medication for any of the mental illnesses that he had been diagnosed with.
The judge explains to the jury the new rules.
If you do not all 12 agree, then you check no.
And a few hours later,
has the jury reached a verdict?
We have.
Each of the jurors decide Bargo should be killed. Jackson's mother attended each of the hearings and shows signs of relief. As for Bargo's 4 co-defendants, each of them is serving life in prison.
While Michael Bargo led the violence that night that ultimately killed Seth Jackson, it was the contribution of all 6 perpetrators that made the prolonged and brutal slaying of 15-year-old Seath possible. Seath was outnumbered in a house specifically set up for his own murder. He was repeatedly overpowered, making it impossible for him to escape the depravity of Bargo. And he was only there in the first place because of the incomprehensible cruelty of Amber Wright, who used his own feelings for her to lure him into a death trap. It could even be argued that it was Amber's deliberate stoking of the rivalry between Seath and Bargo that was the catalyst for the entire murder itself during her trial. The prosecution said, of Wright, the defendant probably played the most important role in that murder. She was the bait. She was the one who lured Seth Jackson to that house. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Goodbye.